motion to reconvene in our public meeting?
I move that we reconvene. Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Any noes? All right. The first item of business is the certification of closed meeting. The Lynchburg City School Board certifies that in the closed meeting just concluded, nothing was discussed except the matters specifically identified in the motion to convene in a closed meeting and lawfully permitted to be so discussed under the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act cited in that motion. To have a motion to approve certification of the closed meeting is second. It's been moved and a second. We certify by roll call vote. Ms. Evans? Yes. Dr. Brennan?
Yes.
Ms. Carter?
Yes.
Dr. Coleman? Yes?
Yes.
Dr.
Yes. Yes.
Dr. Gupta, thank you. I apologize to all of you all for sitting and waiting for us for that time that it took, but it had to happen. So will we all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? That leads us to, I'll get connected here. That leads us to the public comments section of our agenda. In accordance with policy BDDH, public participation, the school board welcomes requests and comments as established in the guidelines within that policy. Individuals who wish to speak before the school board shall have an opportunity to do so at this time. Persons appearing before the school board will not be allowed to campaign for public office or promote private business ventures and should not use profanity or vulgar languages or gestures, make comments about a public official or an employee that are not related to his or her official duties, engage in behavior that disrupts the meeting or intimidates others, or addresses the school board on issues that do not concern the services, policies, role, and/or responsibilities of the school board. Individual speakers shall limit their comments to 3 minutes. A speaker representing a group shall limit his or her comments to 5 minutes. The representative shall identify the group at the beginning of his or her presentation. Comments, answer questions, or otherwise engage in discussion at this time. And we have two tonight speaking for us. Mr. Meadows.
My name is John Meadows, and I've taught in the Lynchburg City School System for 22 years with a total of 30 years in education. Today I'm speaking on behalf of Teachers United with a Voice. It is no secret by now that Lynchburg City Schools have failed our veteran teachers when it comes to salary scales. We have teachers on the salary scale that are making almost 12% less than someone that was on the same step from 2008. That is over a decade ago. Let me put that into a dollar figure. A person who is on step 29 this year is making $54,576, and a teacher on the same step from 2008 was making $61,813. This means that the teacher today is making $7,247 less than the teacher on the same step from 2008. This should be embarrassing that Lynchburg City Schools has allowed this to happen, and we have not addressed it. One of the things that scares this group of teachers is that Lynchburg City Schools has given small raises or bonuses during this decade, but they have always taken the easy way out and not addressed the salary inequities. When Lynchburg City Schools has given a raise, they have taken the easy way out by giving an across-the-board raise instead of addressing the inequities. Another easy way out is increasing the top of the salary scale, which makes it impossible for teachers to reach. Last year, we took the easy way out when we gave bonuses. The easy way out was to give it to everyone. A teacher that had worked for Lynchburg City Schools for 2 weeks received the same $500 bonus as someone who had worked for Lynchburg City Schools for over 30 years. To Teachers United with a Voice, That sounds like the easy way out. We speculate that there is a good possibility of a 3% raise this year. We are fearful that Lynchburg City School will again follow in the steps of the easy way out and just give a 3% across-the-board raise instead of addressing the inequities in the salary scale. Please, as a school board, do not allow this to happen. The salary inequities must be fixed. As a school system, we should be trying to recruit the best and most experienced teachers for our students. I have looked at the school board agendas from April until September and would like to bring something to your attention. We have had approximately 84 teacher hires on the personnel report. Of the 84 hires, 55 of them have had 5 years or less experience. That is 2/3 of the hires with less than 5 years experience. 38 of these hires have 1 year or less experience. If you look at the steps where the biggest inequities fall, which are steps 23 through 32, we hired 6 teachers, approximately 7%. What does this tell us? Does this tell us that Lynchburg City School is only able to attract teachers with little to no experience? Or does it tell us that we can't hire veteran teachers because of the salary inequities? We have heard that correcting the salary scale would cost $10 million. We urge someone to share the salary study that supports this. We are aware that the school board is having a retreat in a couple of weeks. Could you please at least look at these 2 topics so we can try to put more money into the salary scales? Number 1, the Empowerment Academy. We spend approximately $800,000 a year on this program. I urge you to look at the attendance, the SOL data, and the cost per pupil to determine the effectiveness of this program. Please ask yourselves, how is this program unique? Could other alternative programs absorb these students and employees? Number 2, consolidation. We currently have 11 elementary schools. The number of students in these schools are relatively low. I know that consolidation is not a popular decision, but we should be able to save money and put it toward the salary scale by consolidating. Is it possible to do a study to determine if consolidation is an effective option? If we strive to be one of the top school divisions in the state, we must reinvest in our experienced teachers. Thank you for allowing me to share this information with you tonight.
Mr. Lewis?
Good evening to all of you, and as always, thank you for your service to the youth of Lynchburg, and thank you also for the opportunity to speak with you tonight. As a reminder, my name is Carl Lewis, and I am president of the Lynchburg Education Association. Last month, I stood in front of you all and made very clear the expectation that our next budget have a step plan increase for all school employees. Since then, a study completed by the city of Lynchburg shows that the city would need $5.1 million to make all city wages comparable to other markets. This came as a surprise to no one. And I think we can draw a lot of similarities from the study. City employees were paid under other markets. We see the same here in Lynchburg City Schools when compared to other urban districts in the state. The police department is having difficulty with retention as a result, which we also see. In fact, were Lynchburg City Schools to spend $100,000 and go through the same process as the city, we could expect the same result. And this is all just to make us comparable. I would hope we would strive for more than that. This is year 12 for the step scale freeze. This is year 12 of LCS staff members falling further and further behind what their counterparts had earned before them. There's no arguing that the cost of living has increased over these last 12 years, and that the small percentage adjustments the division has made over that same time frame has not kept up. This means that any employee who has worked in the division for 12 or more years is, in reality, making less than they did 12 years ago, and far less than their predecessors made at the same experience level. I know the division is working on plans as we speak to get this done for us. Marie G. and her staff in the personnel department are literally working on the issue right now. This board has to give them the support they need to get this done. Dr. Gupta touched on the urgency of this issue at the last meeting. It has to be done now. We know it will take money to fix the issue. We understand that it's not a simple process to get the money needed, but that process needs to begin now. At your school board retreat, item number 1 needs to be employee compensation. When you build your budget for next year, the step scale needs to be the first thing put in, and everything else needs to be built around it. Every discussion with City Council needs to put employee compensation at the forefront. We have money coming from the state government, and we must make sure that the local government does its part to procure those funds. There's an old coach's saying that says, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. We need this board to take that shot. We need this board to ask for the funding necessary for employee compensation. Because as we've seen in the past, you get $0 of the ones you don't ask for. The clock has ticked down. The game is on the line. Take the shot. Thank you.
That brings us to agenda item C, special presentation, school accreditation results.
Dr. Bruce is coming up to share with us some good news.
I'm right behind you.
Okay. Good evening. Last week, the state released accreditation ratings, and tonight I'd like to share some of that information and the results with you all. The Virginia Board of Education adopted new standards of accreditation last November. The new standards are designed to promote continuous achievement and close achievement gaps. They are also designed to recognize the academic growth of students making significant annual progress. Accreditation under these new standards went into effect with the 2017-18 testing year. During the transition into this new system, schools can be accredited under the traditional system and the new revised standards of accreditation. The traditional system of accreditation has been in existence for many, many years. The traditional targets are pass rates for all students. You can see those there. To be fully accredited under the traditional system, 75% of students must pass English. English includes reading and writing for middle and high school students, and just reading for elementary students. The target is 70% in math, 70% in history, and 70% for science. There's also a graduation and completion index at 85 that our high schools also had to meet under the traditional system, and student growth was not a part of the old system. Now the revised accreditation system. A lot more complex, but a really good step in the right direction. For this year only, again, schools can be accredited under the traditional or the new revised accreditation system. Under the new system, schools must meet targets for English, math, science, subgroups, which include all students, Asian, Black, economically disadvantaged, Hispanic, students with disabilities, and white students. Schools must also meet targets for graduation and completion index, dropout rate, and chronic absenteeism. Chronic absenteeism is defined as students who miss 10% of the school year, which is 18 days, since we go to school for 180. This includes all excused absences, unexcused absences, and any suspensions. Growth, as indicated by improvements on SOL tests for students in grades 4 through 8, also count as a pass. And under this system, English learner students in grades 3 through 12 who improve on the Access for L's English learner test also count as a pass for reading. The revised accreditation system uses a tiered and color-coded system to indicate proficiency. For level 1 or green, that means they meet the standard or exceed the standard or have shown significant improvement. Level 2, it's near the standard and has also shown significant improvement. And level 3, it's below the standard. In some instances, you'll see where something is reported as TS, which is too small, and that means there are fewer than 30 students in a subgroup, so they don't report that. Schools are considered accredited if all categories are level 1 or 2. However, schools can't remain at a level 2 for more than 4 consecutive years, or it reverts to a level 3 in that particular area. It's helpful to understand some of the calculation principles behind accreditation, since you will find that accreditation rates do include some adjustments that the federal pass rates do not. Some of the things that are in the calculating of state accreditation would be schools, of course, again, can meet either the old traditional or the new standards. High schools must have a graduation or completion index of 85 under the traditional method or under 88 under the revised system. Schools can reduce the failure rate by 10% or can use a 3-year average to meet a target. So sometimes you'll see somebody that's not at 70% not meeting that target. However, if they decrease the failure rate by 10%, the state will recognize that as making significant progress and will count that as an accredited area. Recovery points in reading and math are available. Recovery points are when a student fails a test the previous year and they go through remediation during the current school year, they're tested, and then they pass. If that happens, they're counted a second time in the numerator when calculating. So those students, we pretty much make sure that every student who failed in a previous year is remediated and in a really strong remediation program throughout the school year. Substitute tests for high school students recognized by the state are included. We do give quite a few work keys reading assessments and work keys writing assessments at the high schools, and those are included in the English pass rates you will see at the high school. This is our accredited schools chart. We have 12 schools that met accreditation standards for this year. 3 of those met it under the traditional system that we talked about earlier, and the others met it under the new system. Out of the 9 that met it under the new revised standards of accreditation, 7 of those also would have made it under the old standards. So we've got 12 total. And then we've got 4 schools that are accredited with conditions. Those schools are Lincoln Elementary, and Lincoln Elementary did have some subgroup deficits in both reading and math. Lincoln Middle School and Sandusky Middle School had subgroup deficits in English, and again, English is reading and writing together. And Heritage High School had subgroup deficits in math and missed accreditation by 1 point. Staff from the Virginia Department of Education and our curriculum and instruction staff have been working closely with these schools over the past few weeks. We have had visits from our division coaches, division supervisors, and our state coaches that come in and work with these particular schools. This is just the slide to indicate the trajectory we're on for improvement in our school division. This is a page out of our comprehensive plan that we have currently. And you can see back in 2015-16, we only had 3 schools out of 16 that were accredited, 19% of our schools. And it continues to creep up, and hopefully next year we will have all of our schools fully accredited. We are at 12 out of 16 this year. I wanted to explain a little bit about Virginia Graduation Completion Index. 85 points is the target for our high schools under the old traditional system, and 88 points is under the new system. This is not a rate, and I think maybe some of the paper copies that you may have a percentage written. It's not a percentage, it's a rate. So what they end up doing is all of our students who get an actual diploma, a standard diploma, an advanced diploma, an applied studies diploma, all of those students get 100 points. If you get a GED, you get 75 points. Still enrolled 70. Certificate of completion is all students who have met all of their course requirements but may be missing some passing SOL tests. They still get 25 points. You take all of that, you assign those numerical things to each of the students, and then you basically average it. You get hopefully higher than 88 on your completion index. So the state is recognizing level 1 is 88, and level 2, 81 to 87, and then level 3 is anything 80 and below. Right now, EC Glass is at 88, so they're a level 1. Heritage High School is at 87, so they're falling at a level 2. And this is based on the students that just graduated in 2018. Dropout rate is a percentage, and this one, the goal there for level 1 is to be less than 6%. Level 2, of course, is 9%. Level 3 is more than 9%. We were really close with EC Glass. They reverted to the 3-year average for them. They were at 8.65, which has them at a level 2. Heritage High School is at 7.72, also at a level 2. The rate does include students who are unconfirmed under a long-term absence or expelled. One of the struggles that we have, students who are unconfirmed are our students that leave our schools and they go to another school division, possibly, and they don't request records from us. So until they request records from us officially, they're considered dropouts. So sometimes they end up moving out of state, out of country. If they don't request records and they're unconfirmed, we can't prove that they're enrolled anywhere else. They count against us. So that's something that we're really trying to work. Our registrars at our schools and our attendance folks at our schools are really trying to shore that up a little bit better and communicate and almost do like an exit interview with parents as they're leaving our school system, so we can figure out where are they going, and let's prove it once they get there. These are the actual scores that we have for our schools. We have 10 of our 11 elementary schools accredited. You'll notice that the target in parentheses at the top for each subject area shows the pass rate that we need to get. Although some schools didn't meet the target, they may have had growth or a higher 3-year average that allowed for accreditation. So you'll see a couple spots there where the number may not match the target at the top. However, they either reduced the failure rate by 10% or their 3-year average was high enough to meet that target. For our middle schools, we're really excited about the improvement at Dunbar Middle School. Their students in all subgroups, in all subjects, showed tremendous improvement. Lincoln and Sandusky both improved 10 percentage points in math and also had gains in English, but have not yet met the benchmark set for the state for English. Because of that, students will be spending more time reading authentic text and high-interest reading material accompanied by rich discussions about what they're reading in class. We feel that that will definitely move the needle for the students in reading. The integration of writing across content areas is also a focus to help bring up writing scores, because writing scores make up 25% of the English score that you see there. For our high schools, again, the target rates are at the top. This year, EC Glass met accreditation standards under both systems, the old and the new. Heritage High School had a 5-point gain in math, but missed full accreditation in math by 1 point. We're working closely with the school improvement teams and teachers to provide students with personalized learning opportunities through structured remediation and skill-based instructional opportunities. We talked a little bit about chronic absenteeism, and chronic absenteeism, again, is a new measure for accountability for Virginia schools. Students who miss 10% of the school year, which is 18 days, are considered chronically absent. Doesn't matter if that's excused, unexcused, or suspended. For a school to be rated as level 1 in this area, they must have less than 15% of their students missing 18 days. This includes excused, unexcused, absences, suspensions, all of those. We have 6 schools that are classified right now at level 2. Of course, the goal for us is always level 1, and we would even like to see, ideally, less than 10% chronic absenteeism. and we do have that in some of our schools. Our attendance staff continues to work with families to determine the reason for excessive absences and to provide support to the families. There are various levels of support being funneled to our students. The Virginia Department of Education has provided all administrators with school improvement training, and they work closely with the schools who are accredited with conditions. Our staff in the curriculum and instruction, student services, and special education departments are working with teachers, school improvement teams, and principals to address the deficits. School administrators and building level leadership teams are analyzing data carefully and putting programs in place to address areas of weakness. Some of those programs are the 21st Century programs, project graduation, tutoring, working with neighborhood centers, and so on. Teacher-led professional learning communities and support programs such as after-school programs, community center tutoring, in-school remediation, and enrichment are working to provide personalized learning opportunities for students. Staff members are analyzing data, meeting with students to develop plans to address individual areas of weakness and to enrich areas of strength. We don't want to always just address the students that are weak. We also want to enrich the students who are doing well. Schools are communicating with parents and involving them in the educational process as much as possible. Positive calls home, home visits, conferences, and meet and greets at apartment complexes, parent nights at schools or exciting places like Amazement Square are planned or have taken place already this school year. And we're confident that with this level of support, we will see increases in student achievement for all students. And I am available for any questions that you may have.
Dr. Brennan?
Dr. Booth, I know that you've given this presentation many years before, and I know there's been a lot of stress associated with it, but I hope that you are enthusiastic and ecstatic about these results. This is really so great to see, and really want to thank you and your staff for what you've done. I have one question just for explanation and another one just to be clarified. If you could go to slide 7, we could go back to that, which is the one that has the accredited schools. We talk about how we look at data and how we kind of tend to spin it, and I'd love to see if this is true, but when you look at this graph, which is the one that has the accredited schools on it, has a different list of which ones are true, is it fair to say that all the ones that are asterisks on the right could be moved to the left-hand column to say that they passed under the traditional system?
Right, we would have had 10 of 16.
Right, 10 of 16 are the traditional, and we
Yes.
picked up 2 more under the new system.
Right.
So even under the old system, we have gone from 7 to 10 schools that are accredited, which is really unbelievable. And I think your comment on the other graph about how we crept up on your graph, I think it was a big jump to 75%. So again, congratulations. I think that's great information. One question, in our agenda we had sort of an explanation, and one of the things talked about, and this is a side point, about course requirements and verified credits to graduate to get a diploma, and how that has changed with the new curriculum. Would you mind just commenting on that also?
So Profile of a Graduate is a Virginia initiative that is in place for our current freshmen. Those students will not need quite as many verified credits to graduate. Students seeking a standard or an advanced diploma will need 5 verified credits. So they'll have to pass 5 standards of learning tests. In the past, if you were seeking an advanced diploma, it was 9, and if you were seeking a standard diploma, it was 6. So there is a decrease. One of the things about the Profile of a Graduate that's really nice is it really is making an effort to get our students college and career ready. So getting those SOL tests out of the way so that students have freed up time in their schedule during at least their junior and senior year to take some really neat elective courses, career tech courses that they may enjoy, trying to figure out what they want to do when they grow up and when they leave us. So those pieces of Profile of a Graduate are wonderful. There are some opportunities there as well for some internships, career exploration. We'll be implementing those and embedding that into some of our curriculum here in the next couple of years when those 9th grade students are moving forward.
Thank you very much.
Ms. Carter?
Just want to thank you for the presentation. Just for clarification, you stated that the attendance, that's excused, unexcused, all
Attendance.
So if I wanted to take my child out for a week, for vacation, they'll be counted against?
It counts against the school.
Interesting.
It does.
And the other one is the program completion certificate. About how many of our students graduate with that?
So typically what we have is if I had to guess, about 6 total in the division that have all their courses completed and passed. All they're missing is usually 1 or 2 SOL tests that they need to pass. Typically what they do is they come back to their SOL Academy in the summer. We give them remediation, and most of the time they pass it over the summer. So they don't go long without the diploma. We do try to upgrade that, and we let students come back and take that. We had a student one year, he was 21, and he finally got through. So they can come back as long as they want to get through that test, and we will allow them to come to our summer programs for that extra help to get them through the test.
And once they pass the SOL, then does their score change, or does it?
They always take the highest score.
I mean, the number, the count, does it change from 25 to 100 to the? Because the program was completion.
It would if you were looking at like a 5-year index. So the index that they're looking at studies students when they came in, these past students, when they came in as freshmen 2014 to the end of the year 2018. So if they would pass in the summer, they wouldn't count for that cohort. It would be shown in the 5-year index, which the state really doesn't look at, but they do calculate it for us.
Dr. Sinai?
Thank you again for the presentation and going over all the changes and everything. Is there a way, or does the state make it possible to match students who we've lost track of because they haven't asked their transfer records, whether or not they received a GED or anything like that, which would count, I would assume, as a completion?
Right. GED would not count.
Oh, it doesn't count?
Well, it would not. We wouldn't be able to track them. There would not be a clean way to track them. We could track them if we saw their student test identifier number show up anywhere else in the state of Virginia. All students have a state ID number for testing. That's not used for GED testing because that's a whole outside agency not associated with Virginia Public Schools. But if they show up anywhere else and they take an SOL test, we typically are searching and catching those students and then trying to contact the school to determine, are they enrolled? Can we count them? They're not really dropped out. They're not unconfirmed, and try to do it that way.
So a student who would say, and I'm not naming names, but I know of one such, who was my daughter, in fact, left in their junior year and just took the GED to be done with high school, that would not count? That would
It would if
work
we had
against the high school?
if we had evidence that we knew that that happened.
Oh, okay.
Yes, if we
So
knew
if
that
it-
that happened, it's when a student, comes to school on Friday and Monday they just disappear. We have no idea where they are. And typically after 15 consecutive days absent, we drop them from our rolls. And we're just hoping that we get some type of records request that will come in and we'll be able to determine where they are.
Do you do anything, and I'm not sure how you would, to follow up people, say a year out? I know you say you do exit interviews with students that you know are leaving, but students who just don't return.
Yeah, our attendance folks are, I don't want to say aggressive, but pretty aggressive. They're doing Facebook searches.
Yeah.
They're on Instagram. They're on every kind of social media trying to locate these kids to determine where they are and trying to reach out to get a hold of them, talking to family members if they can. A lot of times it's our students that are transient from out of state or out of country that they leave and we just don't know where they are, and out of state schools are not sometimes asking for the records. Or if they transfer into a private location, they typically may not ask for records. So that's tough.
Yeah, thank you.
Dr. Gupta?
Be able to share with us maybe at a later date the list of schools who are conditionally accredited. You have 4 schools this year. Historically, what has been the trend? Are there chronic schools who have missed that all along, or they're new to this list? I don't know if you have that information, or you can share that at a later
Right.
time.
The accredited with conditions rating is brand new.
Okay.
So this is the first year that anybody has received that. We've had schools in the past that have been accreditation denied, and they typically would get that for not being accredited for 4 consecutive years. So we do have those lists.
Could you share that?
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Dr. Nellis?
On your list of accredited, or list of the school scores with the accreditation status, is it, I guess, for example, one school that, say, is below the 70 threshold pass rate in science or whatever, but they're accredited, is that because of the 3-year average?
It would be. Either that or they decrease the failure rate by 10%.
But we can't tell from you can't tell from this information that we have at this point. Is that correct?
Right. Yes. So on slide 12, you'll see the scores, and you'll see a few areas where it is. If you look at slide 12, I don't know. Yeah, got it up there. So if we look at Perrymont Elementary School, PES, science and reading, neither one of those met the benchmark or the target at the top. However, their 3-year average is why they're accredited. Is that what you're asking?
But that's always been the case, the 3-year average.
Yes.
Versus, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And the decreasing the failure rate by 10% used to be a federal only calculation, and now the state has adopted that as well.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, and that's what happened with Bass. Bass made some significant improvements, so they are accredited based on the improvements that they made by decreasing the failure rate by 10%. Their science went from 55 to 66, and their reading went from 66 to 70. So those increases are why they earned that accredited status.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Carter?
You were talking about the students that may leave. What's the best way for the parents to let the school know that my child is moving out of the country? Just to say that, or do they need a note or some type of?
Typically what happens is the school that they attend or they register for, they send a release of records to us, and then we release records. We would prefer that they let us know, just the counselor or the attendance office or even the main office, that they are leaving, because that sets a lot of things in action, such as gathering all of their permanent records, all of their assessment data, all of that together, so we can provide the school with that information. If they have an IEP, if they're a special education student, we like to make sure that the school gets the IEP immediately. We don't want to wait for the mail. We want to fax it over to them so that they have it the day the student walks in. So just keep it, we're going to keep communicating that to parents through meetings and through just our communication that, if for some reason you're moving, please let us know so that we can, best serve you getting the records where they need to be.
One more, Susan.
Sharon?
And will we also be able to see this breakdown by the categories you were talking about, the subgroups? Yes.
Yes, possibly. It depends on the reports that we have. Some of them identify individual students. So it may say students with disabilities, and it may say 2 students and for a school. So the subgroup that we have as a report shows sometimes student-specific information. All of the data that does not have individual student information is on the DOE website, Virginia Department of Ed website, under the school quality profiles. And it lists the nice color chart that shows everything. The reports that we use, of course, in-house are actual individual kids kind of that come out. So that report is not releasable, but the ones that are online wouldn't identify an individual kid. So we could, I wouldn't say I could print them because they're, it's a live site that you have to manipulate. I could definitely point you in that direction and give you the link to that.
So let me add to that. So in your goalposts that I sent out this past Friday, and I did a profile of one school and one subgroup. That was the subgroup that's on the public website because you have enough students in that subgroup that they can report that. So.
I just wanted the public to know where they can find it.
Okay, it is on the public website. You can see the subgroups.
Yes, it's school quality profiles is what they're called, and they're right there on the front of the Department of Ed website.
Dr. Coleman?
To that end, and you don't have the information before you, looking some of the fine work of my colleagues on the board, at Lincoln Elementary School, apparently when you do look at what has been made available with the subgroup there in English, it appears to me that at Lincoln Elementary School, I've noticed possibly the only area where African American students seem to be outperforming other subgroups. And I'm curious if in fact that is true. What are the fine people over at Lincoln Elementary School doing in the area of English in that regard? And maybe that could be passed on and helped in other areas. You would have to look at it to see.
Right.
And I look at all of those subgroup situations. And I would like to complete my statements by saying that before, between, and beyond, as we work on helping all students get as high as they can, we got to work on what are we doing before they get to us, what are we doing with them while they are with us, and what we do with them beyond being with us that turns that cycle around in an upward trajectory before, between, and beyond.
I would just, Dr. Nellis?
I guess another thing caught my eye on the chronic absenteeism was on some of the elementary schools that have noticeably higher rates than the rest. And I don't know if anyone has a comment with regard to those specific maybe student cohorts or
Yes, attendance, and I think I said this last time, is very important to us in terms of making sure that our kids report to school. It's very difficult to hold the elementary student accountable for his or her attendance because most often it's the parent that is responsible for making sure they had a good night's sleep, putting them on the bus, making sure that they drive them to school. It's usually not the little people themselves that are responsible for that. So therefore, the corrective action associated with that has to be with the parents. And sometimes that's very challenging to get parents to get their kids to school and to get their kids to school on time too, because some of what we see, if you're a kid and you're coming to school an hour late every day, you might be missing reading every single morning, which would factor into those reading test scores. So, as much as possible, we discourage parents from, taking kids on family vacations during school time because we think every minute is precious and that they do need to get to school. Our attendance officers, what did you say, are aggressive, nicely aggressive. They do make sure to make contact with families, but it is an area, and I see some of my elementary principals out here are nodding their head that we are desperately trying to figure out better ways to work with families to get kids to school and to get kids to school on time. I don't want that part to be missed as well. Tardy does play into it.
I'd like to add a comment to what Dr. Coleman said, is that we do have some really outstanding scores in certain areas, and looking at the practices that those teachers are using, the materials, the strategies, so they can share them where their colleagues may not be having as much success. We do want to look at data. We just learned from our last training that we should be looking at data at every board meeting, and we should also be looking at how that impacts our policies. So if this new attendance requirement has in any way, we're adding to it by our attendance policy, do we need to look at it? Are we sending kids home from school when they're tardy? Are we sending kids home for longer suspensions? If we need to do that, then I think we, as a board being responsible, need to look at that. Dr. Gupta.
You need some resources for professional development, to remove those gaps in achievement which we talked about in the last meeting. So if there are, we'd like to see them. If we need additional resources, if they are needed in which area.
Dr. Coleman?
I'm very confident in Dr. Edwards and admin in working very hard concerning some of the matters that were said during the comment section, public comments around teachers and pay and all of that, and we will leave that to the appropriate persons as we seek to address that. I just want to underscore reality. That's all I'm suggesting, that when we look at our public schools, of the 16, there are only 2 of those 16 schools where the percentage is such that the subgroup breakup around race, there are only 2 schools where the students that are white outnumber the students that are African American. So I'm not suggesting about what type of teacher has to be in front of a kid. That's not my point. But again, as we seek to deal with this, being able to deal with the kids that are in that classroom is vitally important as we seek to deal with, again, helping every kid to get where they need to be. And so it's so many interesting dynamics. These scores are certainly suggestive of an upward movement, and I'm very proud of that.
Any further questions, discussion? Yes.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bruce, for taking all of that and breaking it down in a way that is understandable for us, and I'm sure the people watching at home have a better understanding of the difference between the federal pass rates and the state pass and growth rates all included in one. I do appreciate that. And to your point, Dr. Coleman, when it comes to looking at subgroups, and I say achievement gaps with an S on the end because we do look at multiple gaps, not just the gap between white students and black students, but economically disadvantaged students and those who are not, special education students and those who are not. There are multiple gaps. The one thing that I do on the spirit of educating the public that I think is really important, particularly when you're looking at some of the smaller schools, because we're looking at pass rates as percentages. So we know the smaller the group, the bigger the percentage on each individual child, if we were to look at it that way. And for some of our children, that percentage not only is high because the group is small, but they also represent multiple subgroups. So I could be counted as, if I could use me, I was counted as, an African American student, also an economically disadvantaged student, and I could also be a special education student, which means when you're looking at the performance, sometimes we're talking about, when you look at the cohorts, some of the same children over and over again, which is why it's important for us, and I know Dr. Bruce and team and student services and the special education department, we dig down to find the actual child that's behind that number, and then you start your programming there. What does the child need? So that's the first point. The second point that, I am very, very proud of the work that my staff has done and my students and my families. I think it's been a tremendous team effort on the part of everybody. And, often we talk about the work of the teachers, the work of blah, blah, blah. And I have 2 students who are sitting here with us, and I want them to know, I know you guys are holding it down, doing what you need to do too. And, the success that we have with the test score starts with you because you are doing the learning and you are showing us what you know, and you're supported by your families. But that being said, the real help that we're going to do, and I'm going to push the board to join me in this effort, is we have these kids for 7 hours a day. And they come to us in the morning, and I've been there in the morning, and some of them coming off the bus, we're like, okay, welcome to school today. And my teachers, my staff do an amazing job during the day, but sometimes at the end of the day, we're sending children back to a very different environment. And there's a feeling of restart the next day when you're sending a child who you worked on phonics, you worked on decoding, they're great with fluency, and they're going home to perhaps not the stable environment. Perhaps there's not a meal there. Perhaps there's not a place to lay your head and get a good night's sleep, and they're coming back the next day. So our teachers sometimes are feeling the restart of the community effort. So one of the things I'd like to see going forward is, as this board and my staff develop a strategic plan for education, what is the plan for the family? And we can't do that by ourselves as a school division. We need the community support. So when we're looking at our children and we say this is what they need, this is the help that they need, we also recognize on a simple thing as attendance. We can't help the individual child with the attendance. We have to help the family that gets the child to school with the attendance, and who's helping us with that while we're helping the child. So I'm calling all soldiers out there to join this initiative with me to really look at what are we doing for our families so that we are truly setting our kids up for success in all of our kids, not just the ones who are underperforming or passing the test, but even our kids who are passing, who are soaring. How do we make sure that they continue to soar and that they have all the opportunities that they need?
Thank you. All right, that moves us to the next agenda item, the finance report. Mr. Beckles?
Good evening. You have before you the financial statements for the 2 months ended August 2018. We're 2 months into the fiscal year. As far as revenue is concerned, everything is on schedule as budgeted. From our expenses, the second month really doesn't begin to kick in until the third month. As you know, August school just was in for 2 weeks. It'll begin to settle down in September and October. I would point out to you though on your, that will be page 13 and 11 and 13. You'll see a small negative in the budget available balance for maintenance and operation and facilities on the payroll line. At this point, I'm not worried about that. 2 months, they're gonna bounce around a little bit. And you notice it's a small amount, so at this point, I'm not too concerned about it. From the expense side, everything is going as planned. From the revenue side, everything is going as planned. So if anyone have any questions, I'll entertain those on the income or the expenses for the month of 2 months ending August.
Any
if
questions?
you don't, take ready.
Any questions?
You answered my question about that. Personnel for facilities is 100.2%. So, but you think that it will be balanced out by the end of the year?
Personnel, just before I came in, I was adding the yellow sheets, additions, pinks, people are leaving. It's still bouncing around. Not until around October, November, when you kind of get into the year, and then I'll be able to tell, okay, this is exactly what's going to be across the year. So at this early stage, I watch it each pay period, but I'm not concerned about it at this point. If there is a problem later on, I'll bring that to your attention. Maybe we need to reallocate from one line to the other, but at this point, I'm not concerned about it.
Any additional questions or comments? This was for information only.
I have one more item. In your packet, you also have a list, a history of the salary and wage increases for the last 7 years, beginning in the fiscal year ending 2012 through 2018. Just to clarify and make the board aware that we did provide raises in 4 of the last 8 years. It was alluded to earlier about a 3% raise. A 3% raise is included in the governor's budget for 1920, 3%. Assuming that stays in the budget, that raise will be effective July 1, 2019, not this fiscal year. But you can see on the sheet there that raises have been given. I noted where the state gave one amount of what we gave. So you can see sometimes, in fact, in most cases, we gave equal to or greater than the state provided. So I just provided that for information purposes for the board.
Could you explain for the people out there, as we see the average increase has been about 2%. And correct me if I'm wrong, a percent is costing the system about $800,000. So why, and there's a disparity between what I heard today was steps and across the board raise. There's some confusion. Could you explain that?
Okay, there are two. This sheet shows what we'll call the cost of living adjustment. Everybody gets the raise across the board. In fact, you heard it alluded to that the experienced teachers on one scale. So we're talking about across the board increase, which everybody shares in. Then you have the pay tables or the pay scales. Each year, the pay rate goes up a little bit, depending. Let's just for our discussion purposes, let's assume the rate increase from year 1 to year 2 is to 3%. So each scale will go up at 3% each year. Well, so if I'm coming in year 1, I expect it to be on step 1. Year 2, I expect to be on step 2, but I also expect not only to be on step 2, but I expect to get this paid for step 2. And that's the difference of across the board and a step. When you're on a step, and we are in fact stepping, meaning you're getting the increase as the year's experience is earned, you expect your salary to go up. In the past, we have not been doing that. So when you step on you might get 3 years of experience, but your pay isn't the same as equivalent to the 3 years on the step table. That's one of the things we are working on. In fact, it was alluded to that the staff is currently working on that. But at this point, there is no stepping. It is only across a flat across the board increase for all staff.
So, I'm hearing right is that it's a two-pronged process. One is you get across the board increase, which may be 2% or 3%.
Correct.
And on top of that, you receive a step increase if there is one.
You can do it that way, or you can put all the increases in the step. So yes, if you do a step increase, I would step to step 2 or 3, wherever I am, get that salary, plus, if you were doing a 2%, you would get plus a 2% salary increase. That would be correct. And that's the bone of contention. A step, I mean, when I move on my year of experience, I should get the equivalent pay based on the tables that we have at the time.
So it seems like the employees have been getting increases. From what I'm looking at here.
They've been getting increases based on what you see on this table, yes.
But not following a step.
No.
So have we ever just thought about doing away with this step and coming up with a new process? Since we can't afford the actual, can we afford the step process? And if we can't, then why do we keep this step?
Afford the step process, and I think the question is difficult to answer, and you know, just for the public to kind of clear up a little bit about the step from the teacher's perspective, as Mr. Beckel said. So if I'm on step 2, and it's the start of this school year, and I'm looking ahead at what step 3 looks like. As a teacher, if I know that my division is following the steps, I'm pretty much guaranteeing myself that that is going to be my salary come July 1. The challenge with that is, while I as a teacher and my staff would say that is going to be my salary July 1, that increase is an increase in salary across the board, whereas the division, the way that we're funded, we can't guarantee that, well, in addition to you getting your salary at that step and you getting your salary at that step, the division as a whole is going to receive a certain increase that will always cover that. So I think the heart of the discussion is when you use a step system, which divisions do, you're making a promise that says next year this money will be there. It's difficult for you all to make that promise, and I can only speak from my experience. When I came in January, I was promised we're getting level funding. When I got here in April, we weren't getting level funding. We were cut 2%, and then, you know, I eventually went to council and we talked, and they did give us level funding, but there was no promise of what we could do, and that is what the board struggles with in terms of doing that. The other part about a step, and from a teacher or employee's perspective, steps are comforting, especially from a family perspective, because not only can I say, next year I'll be here, but I can say as a family member, if we're following a step system, well, you know, in the next 3 years when my kid gets to college, I will be here, and I'm trying to budget and plan for, I can possibly pay for my child to go to college or do some things. That is the comfort of having a step system. But of course that comes with this school division saying, and we also know in 5 years we'll have that amount of money, which we don't. And I think collaboratively we're trying to work with council to make some things happen. We are, as Mr. Beckel said, we are working on that step system. We have looked at what would it look like. The scary part for us is, where's the money coming from? The other school of thought could be, well, you already have the money, use the money you have. So let's talk about that.
So if I use the money I have year after year after year, I'm contributing more and more money to salaries, which really means I have less and less money for things. And considering that 80% of our budget is salaries and benefits, that's a small window of what those other things are. And in those other things are, you know, electricity, air conditioning, transportation, things that you just can't say, we're going to do without. So that pocket of where we can squeeze from gets smaller and smaller. And what I've seen in my experience is the first thing that starts to go up is class size, because now we're just not going to hire as many teachers. And then we start cutting programs that aren't required. And then we put art on a cart, and we do some things that aren't necessarily the best decisions for our kids. So that's the challenge that we face. So this conversation, and I applaud this board for really, you know, it is on your retreat as a discussion item. This conversation is a difficult one to have without some sense of understanding that said we'll at least have some guaranteed funding. One last piece. You have guaranteed funding. You heard Mr. Beckles say we're going to get the 3% if that stays there, so some semi-guaranteed next year, July 1. The other part about that is that's 3% for SOQ funded staff. That's a third of our staff, roughly. So where the state has said we will help you, we'll give you some, 2/3 of our staff are not included in that. And you know, that would be very disingenuous for us to say, well, sorry, oh well. So we have to plan for that too. We have to make sure that and we're really working hard to make sure that we do that. So the efforts are here on this board. The efforts are here with the administrative staff. The challenge for us is that feeling of each year, you know, we need to guarantee somehow that we're going to be able to cover a 2% increase, 3% increase in salary, and we just don't have that capability right now.
Dr. Gupta.
For how many years we have not given a step increase? Do you know offhand? I can see this table starts at 2012, so I'm assuming.
Other than the
10.
first year it was stepped, it was never, no time after that. So it was really never stepped.
So it means, and a step is almost a % increase.
Yes.
From a year to year.
That's correct. But
No?
It is not. It depends on how they built the
yeah,
salary scale.
assuming they built a bit of step, correct.
So
What's the average % increase will be?
it would vary anywhere from 1 to 3% because of the way that the salary scale was put together back in 2007, 2008. It wasn't an equal jump every year. It varied across.
So just say an average, I'm going back to Ms. Carter's point, is let's say 1.5% is the average. So for 10-year catch-up, you need a flat linear line 15% increase. And we don't have that kind of money.
Right.
So you basically, what you're saying is you're looking at across the board increase versus the catch-up on the step.
Correct.
I'm sorry.
Mr. Beckles, I know you've shared this with us in the past, but could you give us some idea, just even a ballpark of what it would cost to reinstate the STEP program and maintain it? Or if that's something you can't, that might be too much to ask for on the spot.
I'm going to answer that based on the steps that we are currently working on.
Yes.
Last year, I think the number was 1.7 to move the step.
Right.
And it can be about 1.8 to 2, I round it up to $2 million a year thereafter. If the current one, now I'm saying the current one, not the one back in 2000 at the beginning, no, the one that we were working on last year.
So basically $2 million on top of our current budget, we would need to find additional.
Correct.
To reinstate just the STEP program.
Correct.
Or cut a lot of things or staff.
Continually cut.
Right.
Continually cut. The issue you run into is we are not in control of how much additional funding we get from the state or, quite frankly, from the city. We can ask, but there's no guarantee that we're going to get that. So that's a problem. So without knowing for certainty how much money you're going to get, in my view, it's unwise to make commitments on obligations when you don't know how much money you're going to get. If you do make those commitments, in order to honor that, you're basically saying is, I'm going to make that out of my current budget whether or not I get additional money. If you get additional money, in your view, that's gravy. You're good to go. If you don't, you've got to cut, let's say that $2 million, you've got to cut $2 million of your existing budget in order to meet that $2 million obligation.
And I think that's what we're doing.
Right. That
That's what we're
becomes, at
doing.
some point, you can't cut, you get to the point where you're beginning to cut the skeleton instead of the fat, because the fat is long gone. When you start breaking into the skeleton, now you have a structural problem. All the scores we're looking at now, you could kind of, that was history. Because now you're getting into the core of who you are to cut to maintain these obligations. So I do get the, the staff's want for the steps. We all would love that. But the current financial condition makes that very difficult to do, make those obligations without knowing, on the other hand, where the funds are coming from.
Thank you.
Dr. Sinai?
Okay, so checking my understanding. So if I was at step 3 when the step freeze happened and 10 years have gone by, am I still at step 3 or am I at step 13? I'm at step 3?
13.
You'll be 13.
You're just not getting the
But you don't get step 13
Oh,
money.
you don't get the money.
But I'm still getting paid as if I'm at step 3? Is that?
No.
No. So each year you have the steps, and then if we follow the steps, that would just be, you just go along the line. But since we don't, if there's a percentage, we readjust, add the percentage, and then the next year there's a whole new list of steps. And what the teachers are saying when they say, I'm at step 13, and someone 10 years ago would have been, so they've had the percentages added on, but the percentages that we've added over the years, even though we have given them raises, does not equal what they would have got if we hadn't given them raises and just followed the steps along the line. So they do move up. We readjust and print a new chart every year that just says, here's where you are this year, based on any percentages that we've added over those last couple of years that we've added it. Or if there's no percentage, you move to the next step and your salary is what it was last year.
Okay, I guess that answers my second question. So if, I'm moving from one step to the next and it represents a 1% increase, but like this table says we're getting a 2% increase, is that 2% on top of the 1% I got from moving the step, or are they combined?
So when we say you're moving a step, if we actually said you were moving a step, you get 1% increase or whatever it is on that table, because it varies. You're actually not moving a step. You're just one more year experienced. If I speak from where the teachers are, you've gotten another year of experience, but we haven't used that table to match that year experience. We've gone over here to a different percentage thing. So it might have been, if it might be a 1% increase that we decided to give that year, but on the step, had you stayed on the step, that might have been a 2% increase. Okay. That's what it is. So that's the difference in the conversation. We are still giving our teachers credit for their year's experience, but we are not moving them along the steps that match those years.
And these increases are basically either across the board cost of living, or they're a step increase, such as they are, but they're not based on merit of any kind.
Not based on merit. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
The challenge with the steps, as Dr. Copeland was trying to explain, when Dr. Gupta asked, is it 1% for everybody along the line? It isn't. So depending upon how the salary guide was created, or the step guide was created, some you may see 0.5%, and then some areas you might see 2%. It depends on where they put the money. And then of course, we have to factor in how many employees do you have on each step. So if I have employees that are, a lot of employees on the step that has the 3% increase versus a lot of employees that are on the step change that has the 0.5%. So it's compounded with where your employees are as well.
The terminology on this step scale, part of what you're talking about, Dr. Sinha, is sliding the scale. So if you're on step 12 this year and we're not going to allow you to step, we're just going to slide you with the same amount of money from 12 to 13. So when you've heard the personnel department talk about, we're going to slide the scales, that's what's occurring. The percentage piece that you ask about in your example of somebody that was on step 3 that is now on step 13, just because we've slid the scale 10 times, by what we have done, their pay is increased by 14.75% over that 10-year time frame. So although they did not step at any point, their pay did increase 14.75%.
Okay.
Ms. Carter.
Still really confused.
I am really, and we are really working hard to try to get teachers and just staff salaries up. But at the same time, I don't believe in continuing a practice that's not working. We haven't done anything with the steps, so why do we keep it in place? I just don't understand that. Nothing has moved, so you just keep sliding on this scale, and then people still have that. I know, especially some that are in that 25-year bracket where they thought they were going to just get a massive amount of money and go up to 80 or something thousand. That's not happening. I've heard from some of those, but it's just like a false hope. So I think we really need to look at just totally revamping that and just getting rid of the steps, because it's not working. It's just there. It's an illusion, because it actually isn't working.
Dr. Coleman.
First question. If a teacher, whether they be first year, second year, third year, whatever, at some point along the way, if they obtain a master's degree or a doctorate, does that impact their pay?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. So what if 300 people who were teaching that year, just like we had a rash of health claims and challenges, what if for some reason we were to have persons doing that? What would we do?
Getting a master's degree?
I'm asking the question, and I think the first response I got was yes. Does a teacher's pay increase if they obtain a master's degree?
Yes.
More than one master's degree or a doctorate? And my question is, what would happen if we had a rash of teachers or staff persons that would do that in the same year? Where would the money come from?
I mean, that happens now. We don't know when it's $3,260 and some change that they get for a master's degree. So if they get that today, once they turn that into us, it starts. It happens during the year.
So I understand that. What I'm trying to say, where does the money come from if that total would be 200 or 300 or 400? Where does it come from? Is
that amount of money normally is existing in your salary laps or your personnel budgets in a given budget cycle. Because I'll give you an example. If you have a teacher that leaves in the middle of the year and you don't rehire that teacher for a month, you've got a month's worth of salary now sitting in your salary lap. So that's a recurring benefit of the personnel side of the budget.
All right, I think I understand that.
And to some degree, if we know we have people in programs, we can kind of predict and plan for some of that. But
I do budget for some of it, but not a massive. All of a sudden.
I understand. The reason why I was simply asking, I think I concur with my colleague, school board member Carter. The other school divisions, all of them that are unique in and of themselves, have we, without paying any money, have we been able to determine at cost? And alongside of this, when you said the scores probably would go south if in fact we were to do something like whatever you prompted you to
what
make
I was
that
getting
statement.
to was if to make that $2 million leap, you'll have to continually cut each year. And where would we cut? It's only going to be programs like Dr. Edwards mentioned, or we have to cut bigger class sizes, so it is going to affect the results. So that's the point which I was trying to make. If you do that, there's only so much things you can cut.
Well said. So, Dr. Edwards, well, I don't want to put that. The teachers that are teaching now, are we saying that those teachers would do more, do better, move more before, between, and beyond if they were being paid a higher amount? Is that what we're thinking?
Because teaching is not one of the most profitable jobs, I hesitate to say because you pay them more, they're more dedicated or work harder. I think what we have in our division is we have a bunch of people, a staff, who go above and beyond and do some amazing things for kids. And I don't think the carrot is, if we give you more, you'll do more. I think we're looking at, you know, when you think of the job of a teacher and you think of the profession, and, you know, here is where all other professions begin, because we mold young minds to start developing that. In other countries, that has a high value for respect for educators, and it shows up in pay. In this country, not so much, and it's not a Lynchburg city thing, but it's just across the board in the country. So, you know, I don't want to say that giving our teachers more money means you get more out of them, because I think they are working extremely hard right now and going above and beyond. But the converse of that, what Mr. Beckles is talking about, is if I start looking at, you know, if you asked me, and I did a reorg plan where I had to look at where did I make some cuts, and I did make some cuts of positions that we no longer have. And generally, you have a literacy support, a math support, you have extra perhaps guidance support, and where we have social workers and psychologists, and those are the areas where you start to become tighter and tighter and tighter. And you have small class sizes, so you can really teach kids how to read. And those are the areas that start to go up. And I think that is what Mr. Beckles was equating to. Those kinds of things could possibly affect the scores. It's not that the teachers are working any less hard or would work more. It's just that the job, because of the support that we might have removed due to the cuts, has made the job a little bit tougher.
I would agree. Madam Chair, I would just simply suggest, because we could go on and on with this tonight, and it's going to be discussed at the retreat, but it seems to me that bricks and mortar are becoming more and more obsolete across the board in just about every discipline in our country. Countries like Singapore, they do a much better job. I think that's what Dr. Edwards is alluding to, than we do in America. But the teacher shortage is real. And the conference we just left was suggesting that we may be getting into a place where we're going to do public education online. So I'm just trying to get at the heart of what the real issue is, and how do we best address it, and how do we best address that. And so I'm wondering, is that other school divisions like ours who found a way to do the programming, make the teachers do what they need to do, starting salaries $50,000. I don't know how this happens, but we're just too smart here in Lynchburg not to figure this out.
Just very quickly, I think that this conversation has been so important, and is obviously important to this board. As one individual board member, I just wanted to make sure everyone knows who's here and who's listening that this is a topic that's being addressed by our finance committee. It's going to be on the retreat. This is probably the most topic that we think is before this board for this year, and we're not going to settle it this evening, but it's hard and it's tough, and we everybody know that we're not giving up, and this is a big goal. Number two is, as Mr. Beckles had pointed out before, we don't generate any revenue in Lynchburg City Schools. If we want $2 million, it'd be nice if the city or the state would provide that for their education. So as people get concerned about this topic, to go to where the money is another place to help us get support from the city and from the state to fund our education. That would also solve this problem, but I think we're going to keep working on it.
Well, and I think we've all said that it's important and that we're willing to have the tough conversations and to make the tough decisions. We are also talking about it with our city council leaders when we meet with city and school leadership. We've also said that we need to go to the state and advocate with our government leaders as well, and we are making plans to do that. We want to be better, and we're going to get there. All right, that is a board retreat item 2. Yes, sir.
Just a final comment. I want people to know that step cutting is not on the agenda yet. We're looking at different options, because the other side of that equation is the morale, retention, hiring, you know, so it has a whole bunch of repercussions. So what we would like to see is from the staff different options, different scenarios, instead of just looking at things hypothetically, some data to support during the retreat.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Beckles. All right, moving to the consent agenda, which consists of school board meetings on September 4th, September 6th, discipline meetings on the 20th, the personnel report, and also the religious exemptions. Is there a motion to approve? It's been moved and second. Any more discussion on that? All in favor? Yes? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstain? All right, that moves us to our student representative comments. We're going to hear from our rep from Heritage High School. Do I need to move out of the way?
All right, so this month we have a lot going on at Heritage, but during September, our senior class was one of the first classes to hear about the Stay Close, Go Far promise, which is a great opportunity for students that didn't really see a future as in college and actually have the opportunity to attend CVCC for free or go to other nearby colleges for a discounted tuition. So I know a whole bunch of my senior class is very grateful for that. And Gear Up, on the night of the Heritage and Glass game, the class of 2020 was granted up to $2,000 between the two high schools in Lynchburg City. So at Heritage, we see a whole bunch of juniors walking around with the class of 2020 sweatshirts. We're jealous, but yeah, they're excited about it. Also in September, several of our seniors got on-site admission to Longwood University. Those are just 5 of the ones that I know. I know a couple more that got an on-site admission as well. And we had a senior class open house, which most of the seniors went to get their transcripts, talk to different colleges and military reps, and got with their counselors to figure out what they need to do to get on the right track to get into the college of their choice. And so Heritage and Glass had a game. The jug is back home where it needs to be. That's Coach Bradley, very, very excited. And we've also beaten the Appomattox Raiders, and we beat the Liberty Minutemen on Saturday. Our cross-country team competed in a nice crossing meet in Salem, Virginia. Grace Stager, which is a young lady in the top right picture, the second from the right, she led the ladies with a time of 23:26, placing 33rd overall. And Luke Richards led the guys with a personal best of 16:19, making him 6th overall. Luke Richards also runs track, and he is also one of our national runners. AP Environmental Science and Ecology took a James River canoeing trip. I went on that trip. It was very fun. It was very educational. It was very hot. It was a great experience, and I feel like classes behind me will really enjoy it, especially if they enjoy science and outdoors. It was a very fun trip. Some of our football players, tipped their canoe over and fell in the lake. I didn't get a picture of that. I was very upset. Pioneer Theater has a production of Clue out. There are still 3 more showings that you all could attend. One is tomorrow, Thursday, and Saturday at 7 o'clock. Prices are $8 for adults and $5 for students and senior citizens. And there was a video. We had the Marine Corps band from, I think, Paris Island, and they came to all 3 lunches and did a really loud and amusing show. It was really cool. And then the Beacon of Hope scholars, Manon Shaw, Micaiah McMillan, Tamarick Cobbs, Allison Palmer, Malik Harvey, Shania Scott, and Rashid Christian. They received scholarships from Beacon of Hope, and they are continuing their education at collegiate level at several different colleges. We would also like to congratulate an alumni of ours, Lamondre Watson, for being named the Assistant Principal of the Year for 2018-2019 school year. Lamondre is Assistant Principal at Vance County Middle School. And upcoming in 2 weeks is our homecoming. If you guys would like to come to that game, you know, it's on October 19th, home at City Stadium. And we are excited for our Spirit Week. We have tons of great days planned ahead for that. And that's it. Thank you.
Let's hear about EC Glass.
Okay, so at EC Glass, we recently had our homecoming and we did a full shutout against the Brookfield Bees at our game. So that was pretty exciting for everyone involved, as you could see from the football team. And then the other school board representative from EC Glass, Ja'Cory, he got homecoming king. Jemai got homecoming queen, so that was super exciting. Then the dance was a huge success, as I heard. And then in the Lynchburg 10 miler, we had a whole team from EC Glass and our JROTC Raiders also ran together, and I got to see them run by at the top of my street and heard all their chants and cheers, which was super exciting. And then Dracula, which is our small black box theater play, is actually opening October 3rd, so tomorrow through the 7th. And it's going to be a really great play. They worked really hard on their special effects, so it should be a little creepy for October, so that'll be exciting. And then we had a mini college fair at EC Glass, and on the right are just a couple of the colleges that actually attended the college fair. And a lot of the people in my class were really excited to go during lunch or during other class periods to go check out the colleges and just explore their options as a senior. And then again at EC Glass, as my other representative touched on, the Stay Close, Go Far program, the collaboration between the Beacon of Hope and LCS has been much talked about at EC Glass, and everyone's really excited for these opportunities to go into four-year and two-year colleges and universities, also technical training around the state, and to just have this opportunity through the Beacon of Hope. And then another upcoming event that's specifically with the NHS is we're going to help out with the Boys and Girls Trunk or Treat Club, so staying within the October Halloween theme. We're going to have a bunch of people from the NHS get into groups and then decorate different cars in their trunks and then help with the trunk or treat on October 26th from 5 to 8 and just interact with all the kids and have a good time. And then that's it. That's all my slides, but we also were really happy to have congressional candidates Ben Klein and Jennifer Lewis come speak at EC Glass, and we had really good turnouts from the student body at all of those conversations and the speeches that they made, and we had a lot of good questions, not only from our teachers that attended, but also from the students that attended. And it was really good to see everyone becoming more educated in the legislative process in Virginia. Cool.
Thank you both very much. All right, that moves us to school board committee reports. Finance committee?
The finance committee, we are continuing to look at the different, our finances to make sure that we are using them to the best means possible, and we're exploring ways to find the monies to do salary increases, and that's it.
Governor's School Committee?
The Governor's School had their first meeting of the year, and it was pretty non-eventful, settling a yearly budget and things like that. But I did want to mention, I had someone ask me recently what was the Governor's School. So I just wanted to briefly tell the public that the Governor's School is an intensive research and laboratory program that's technology infused throughout the curriculum and offers an active learning environment. Our students come from 10 different high schools, and the students are selected from search committees in each school division. So I don't want to bore the public with too many details, but I thought since I had that question personally that I would mention that. I also would mention that they're often running, they offer several Saturday sessions throughout the year where students come voluntarily, which I think is amazing. The students are able to get additional help or just work on projects, and they've already had one in September, and they've got one coming up in October as well.
Thank you. Laurel? No report?
No.
Okay. STEM Academy?
STEM has not met since our last meeting.
Thank you. All right, advisory committees to the school board. Dr. Edwards?
Yeah. None of the advisory committees have met since our last meeting, but I do want to point out that we have posted all the committee dates, upcoming dates and past dates, on the agenda so that people would know. I think that was a request that we know when they're going to meet.
Thank you. Yes, Dr.
I just
Coleman.
want to acknowledge my appreciation for the commitment that I see of all of the board members, and as it relates to the finance committee, I know that the chair was a few miles away and was so dedicated and committed to make sure that she was back for that meeting, and you as well. And so I just hope everybody knows there's a lot of work that goes to being a part of this school board in person, in my personal opinion, just doing an excellent job keeping up with all these commitments.
Thank you. All right, that moves us along to unfinished business. And the first involves school board retreat topics for 2018-19. Each year we conduct an annual retreat and identify topics, and the topics that we've identified after much input, much correspondence, they're listed here: the strategic plans, salaries, safety plans, crisis plans, student discipline, mental health, bullying, sexual harassment, and we added the superintendent's evaluation because after our last meeting in Charlottesville, you should all have a book that we will look at and make sure that we're following that procedure. It was an excellent workshop. Okay, so do we have any discussion or clarification? Dr. Gupta?
Madam Chair, you think we'll be able to, are there too many topics?
Yes. There are too many
because
topics.
strategic plan is a groundbreaking thing, and the salaries is a very important issue. So time permitting will be going in that order, I'm assuming. My assumption is correct?
Yes.
We'll start with the strategic plan and go down to salaries?
Yes.
Or salaries could be part of the strategic plan?
Yes.
And then go down from there?
Yes. And we've also added a number of work sessions. So topics that we cannot get to, that we don't finish, then we now have another place that we can add them. And yes, but that's a lot of information and discussion and opportunity there. So that's the plan, as I understand it. Dr. Edwards, is it? That's the plan. Okay, so any further discussion or questions or clarifications? Yes.
I'd make a motion to approve the topics for the annual board retreat.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I made a correction. You said
Yes.
5 items, there are now 6 in the list.
Yes, there's 6.
So let's, for the record, the correction from 5 to 6 items.
Thank you. Oh,
So
we have a motion and a second. Are there further questions? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Just asking. All right, I do remember it's the 12th at Lynchburg College. I think we said 9 to 4.
University of Lynchburg.
Ah, yes. Thank you. University of Lynchburg. I will get that right soon.
Madam Chair, is it 9 to 4 or 8 to 4?
I think we said 9 to 4.
So breakfast will be ready at 8:30.
Okay, cool.
Half hour.
So breakfast will be ready at 8:30, and
The retreat can start at 9.
correct.
Okay.
Okay. Moving on to school board governance norms, protocols, and goals. The school board met, along with Dr. Edwards, met on September 21st to receive governance training conducted by the Virginia School Board Association. During that professional development training, the school board reviewed and revised its current governance norms and protocols, which were developed during a similar training in September 2017. At the same time, the school board also set goals that are attached to this agenda item. I would like to read those goals. The board will develop and implement a 5-year strategic plan to prioritize the needs of Lynchburg City Schools. The board will address fiscal responsibility and management for revenue growth, staff compensation, personnel, and facilities. The board will develop and implement a comprehensive communication and engagement plan to enhance relationships with our stakeholders. The board will develop and implement a plan to enhance growth, development, and success for all students. That was a really good work session to get those. All right. Any discussion, questions, comments?
I commend you for having that session. I think that was very fruitful to come up with this four. They are on page 26
of the board.
The agenda.
Right. This is up for approval. So do we have a recommendation that the school board approve the governance and protocols and goals for the board?
I second.
First and second. All right, we'll vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oppose? Great. That moves us to new business, and that is Dr. Edwards.
Sure. Our first item for new business, one I mentioned last month, that we revisited our advisory committees, one of which is the Equity Task Force. And over the past month, we've had staff members and community members submit letters of interest to be a part of the Equity Task Force. So what the board has before them tonight is a list of those community and staff members who expressed an interest in being on the Equity Task Force. I will say that as of Sunday night, there were at least 2 other people whose names aren't on this list who intend to submit a letter of interest. But up for information, discussion, and approval are the Equity Task Force members.
There any discussion or questions? Dr. Brennan?
I'd just like to comment, I think it looks like a great list. You'd hope to have many people on the committee from the community, and it looks like a great list, and I would, if it's okay, I'd like to make a motion that it be approved.
I had another question.
Okay.
Well, Ms. Carter.
Sure.
So you said there, I see the number of people, and according to the summary and description, it says a maximum of 20 members.
Correct.
So,
and some of these people are our people. What we didn't want to do on our Equity Task Force is we wanted to be equitable. And since we are sort of reinstituting it a little bit different, we were trying to honor the request of anybody who had submitted a letter of interest at this point. One of the first things we'll do are our norms and everything when we go. So I suspect sometimes with committees, the participation tends to dwindle as you go along. So
are you all going to change that maximum?
We can, yes. That might be one of the rules that we do when we meet with our norms.
I think School Board Member Carter addressed it. I thought we had discussed about the cap situation, but it sounds like you're going to take care of it. And again, these individuals express an interest. We don't necessarily do any vetting, and I'm asking this same question, and for all of these, I'm only asking it once, so I won't have to ask it again. When these persons express an interest, hopefully the cap issue won't be an issue, but if persons aren't doing what they need to be doing, because a matter like equity, with equity habits across the school division, with all of its areas, we need 20, 18, 19, how many people fully engaged. Yes. So is that what we're going to be as our practice, and not just going to be sitting there with 10 and 8 and 5 for the 4 or 5
That
meetings?
is the goal for all of our committees,
Gotcha.
to really have full engagement, participation, outcomes, and work. So if you didn't sign up to work, you might want to rethink that.
Yes, ma'am. Gotcha.
We have a motion from Dr. Brennan to approve the membership for the Equity Task Force Committee for 2018-19.
Second.
Moved and second. Any other further discussion? So all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Now we're moving to the General Career Technical Education Advisory Committee for 2018-19.
And again, this is another advisory committee, which Mr. Dellinger, who's in the back, you know, he chairs. And I will say, unlike the equity committee, this one you have to have participants from each and every area that represents the programs that we have. So you'll see their membership list is a little bit more intense than simply the equity committee, and only because they have to identify the program for which they represent. And I believe this form has to be submitted to the state as well. So we tried. There it is. Right. Thank you. So again, as with the Equity Task Force, the Career and Technical Advisory Committee is there to have a bunch of committed and engaged individuals who are there to help Ed with the task of making sure that we provide our students with some wonderful opportunities. So.
Discussion, questions?
I guess the question, there's a B&I parentheses P. Can you, I tried to puzzle that out and I just
It was put there
couldn't.
to make you think and have to read.
Yeah, well, you wanted to come up and talk.
Get up here
so.
somehow. So
I
put
tried
that
to
in
save
there.
you.
No, actually, Dr. Niels, the little acronyms, that is, I cheat. I use this document also as part of our Perkins Federal Grant. And like for example, Bob Bailey, Center of Advanced Engineering, he represents our machine trades group. The B&I stands for Business and Industry Rep as part of the Perkins Grant. I have to have a certain number of folks in each of these coded areas. Community college, Wendell Walker's member of the labor department here. Again, you'll see mostly business and industry. Community college representatives, you'll see Elizabeth Nairhood, Workforce Investment Council representative, et cetera, et cetera. The P stand for parents. I use a lot of our employees to also represent as parents. And then the O's are just others or at-large members who just, for various reasons, they work closely with career tech programs. The STEM Academy works very closely with us, so I invite Mrs. Cash to be part of the board. We did have one new thing with Dr. Edwards leading the initiative to have more parent involvement this year. We had 6 or 7 different parents call and ask about the committee. We actually added Kim Seville, a parent of former engineering students, EC Glass, as an official member representing engineering. And we also had other folks that did call, Reverend Coleman, some folks we don't put on the list that wanted to be a part. I am going to invite them to each meeting as an at-large member. If they want to come and spend time with us and give us their input, I'm going to welcome them there. But that's what all the codes stand for, Dr. Niels. It's actually for the Perkins Grant recognition of different members and what their areas are. Any other questions?
Dr. Brennan.
Just one comment to thank Mr. Dellinger for his work, and also to point out in last week's newsletter that Mr. Dellinger also selected by the Virginia Association of Trade and Industrial Educators as the Outstanding Career and Educational and Technical Educator of the Year, which I thought was pretty impressive, and not to mention the fact he was also chosen by the Optimist of the Year for the Optimist Club, and we can always use all that optimism that you bring to us. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Brennan. Thank you. I was very humbled. I'm probably turning red now. I'll go back to my seat.
Honor well deserved.
Right.
Well deserved. All right, this is up for vote. Do I have a recommendation to approve the membership for the General Career and Technical Education Advisory Committee for 2018-19?
I'd like to make that motion.
Dr. Brennan. Second. Second? All right. Any other discussion, further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Moving to the Health Advisory Board Committee.
Okay, and again, our last committee, well, I guess I shouldn't say our last because we did special education last month, but our Health Advisory Board Committee. And again, you know, one of the things this board should be proud about is we made some changes. We put out some information. Within a month, we have all of these people who are interested in working with us and helping us. So I'm really grateful for the community support. Sometimes you're begging and scraping for somebody to help you, which isn't the case here. So we certainly don't want to turn anyone away who is going to join us in doing some amazing things for kids. So you have before you the proposed members of the School Health Advisory Committee up for approval.
Questions or comments? This, yes, Dr. Goodman.
As the health landscape is changing, I know we have a couple of doctors, I'm assuming they're MDs, and I CNR, and in future I hope we can include some PAs, you know, as there are nurse practitioners, as that landscape is increasing and more people will be getting healthcare through those providers.
That's good.
Further discussion? Question? Thank you. This is up for vote, so do I have a motion?
To approve the membership for the Health Advisory Board Committee.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. Any more discussion before we vote? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. The next item is Virginia Tiered System of Support Grant Cohort 4 Implementation Phase. It's a lot.
All right, and Ms. Brown is up here with Ms. Penn.
Good afternoon, Board. For the 2018-19 school year, Lynchburg City Schools was awarded a grant for $34,322.13 from the Virginia Department of Education for Cohort 4 Virginia Tiered Systems of Supports, in which we call VTSS. VTSS is a data-informed decision-making framework for establishing the academic, behavioral, and social-emotional supports needed for a school to be an effective learning environment for all students through multiple tiers. We know from research and the effective, efficient, and implementation logic that we use with data that we can change behaviors, we can increase academics, and we can improve the social emotional well-being of the students. With all this in mind, the VTSS framework follows a leadership model of problem solving, action planning, and a leadership team based at the division level and also at each of the school levels to have a dialogue around the school needs that is based upon data. In the VTSS process, we emphasize the use of the data to drive our dialogues and decisions that are made to enhance the school's climate and culture. You will see a little bit of our VTSS teams in action and hear from their school-based coaches and administrators around the work of VTSS. Ultimately, VTS is a framework that we can use in LCS to build, develop, and install a way of work that is done with fidelity around evidence-based models and practices while keeping the educational, emotional, and development needs of students at the core of what we do. Today, I have with us Jackie Penn, who is our PBIS coach. And this year, we will be bringing on new to our pilot programs. Sandusky Elementary School, Mr. Womack, and Sharon Anderson at Heritage Elementary School. Currently in the pilot program, we have Lincoln Middle School and EC Glass High School. And at this time, I'd like to show you a brief video.
We've been a VTSS pilot school within the state. VTSS is Virginia Tiered Systems of Support, and we were a PBIS school before, but VTSS is a state initiative that combines the behavior that came from PBIS with academics and social emotional needs.
One of the things last year as we were transitioning from PBIS to VTSS is really wrapping your mind around the thought process that is more than just purely behavior, that we're trying to reach the student as a whole. We're trying to reach our school as a whole.
When you hear VTSS, it's a new acronym, a new language. For us, it's simply, here are some strategies that we're going to use for all students. Here's some strategies that we may use for some specifically identified students. We think about every child by name and by need. And so for me, VTSS just is another component of that.
We taught expectations to our students at the beginning of the year, what behaviors we expected of them. We spent time going over lesson plans with them so that they were clear on what our expectations were. We've also developed 2 procedures this year that have really helped change the climate of the school. One was a school-wide tardy policy so that all teachers are doing the same thing when it comes to tardies to class. And the other one was a school-wide hall pass procedure. And for both of those, we had input from the staff. And so we were seeing a lot of buy-in, and we're seeing that really kind of change how things are going.
Last year, if you looked at our August discipline referrals from 2016 to 2017, there was a decrease. And then from 2017 to 2018, August, there was a major decrease. And I think when you walk around our halls and you see one, less students out, which means more students in the classroom, receiving the instruction that they need, I think it's been a great impact.
Last year we spent a lot of time building the foundation, gathering the voice so that we could create something that was representative of our student population, our community at large, and faculty and families. We ended up surveying the students through the recommendation of the VTSS program about their dream school, and it's so rich to read the feedback that we gathered from students and faculty and parents. And that was part of the voice that played into the mission and vision statement that we created for Lincoln. This year, a lot of our focus is on our communicating and educating the students in what the expectations are, role model, playing that out for them, having them have opportunities to practice that, and then obviously the positive reinforcement, which is a key component.
Our ultimate purpose is to improve the education for all students. So I think by including it from multiple viewpoints and really have a group of people working together in the same direction is what's made it so powerful.
VTSS really is a way of work of a school, and you shouldn't have all these extra subcommittees and everything. It's everyone working towards the same goal.
Being able to have everyone on the same page using the same language, and then students are hearing that and seeing that. And so regardless of who they see in the building, they know that we're all speaking the same language, we're all on their team, which then builds that culture of community, that culture of family here. Because again, we're not doing different things in different places, we're all on the same page.
It's a marathon, it's not a sprint, and you need to be open-minded, you need to be willing to grow.
Trust the process. It feels a little slow at the beginning, at least for me it did. But it's exciting now because I can see why we did the things that we did that are leading up to what we're doing now. I can't wait to see what's next.
Do you have any questions?
Questions or comments? So what's the plan to roll it out to all the other schools?
We're slowly bringing on 2 to 3 schools each year. And we have some overachievers at some of the schools in terms of principals, and they're trying to jump on board already. And so we want to make sure that when we roll it out, we're rolling it out with fidelity, because like we said, we have multiple tiers. So our framework is based upon 3 tiers. It's called a tier 1, which we use universals. Well, let me Jackie talk.
Sure. So we have 3 tiers. Tier 1 is for all students. Everything we do well, evidence-based, academically and behaviorally for students. Tier 2 would be students who need additional supports, layered with the tier 1 that they continue to receive. For example, Mr. Prophet left some of his acknowledgement tickets with us tonight. He wanted to be here, but he left these with us. And it may seem like a low maintenance item, but a kid knowing what they did right can make a world of difference in their behavior, and kind of looking at it from the perspective of court being good versus court being doing something wrong. And just building that climate and culture. Should a student need additional supports, we look at a tier 3 level where we would approach it from an individual perspective for that student-centered. A team comes together and discusses the needs of that student and how to support them. It is a process. As Dr. Garrett stated, it's a marathon, not a sprint, in a very real way. We're looking at a 3 to 5 year process to get in what we would consider full implementation. So that's the gist of it.
Thank you. Questions?
And so soon we should be hearing within the next 6 months from Ms. Anderson and Mr. Womack in terms of their implementation, because it'll look different at each school.
Right.
Because it's data driven. And so they're looking at the achievement, behavior, attendance, and they're looking at their school as a whole to come up with a plan as to how to best meet the needs at their school. But they're also looking at the branding of their school. So when you're talking about fins up, fins down at DESI, you know, how are we branding each of the schools so when the kids walk in, they're proud of their school? We're, you know, pushing having pride back. What's your fight song? You know, who's a Jaguar when you walk in? Do I hear these sayings in the neighborhood when we walk out into your community? Have you integrated your community into your VTSS culture in your school? So it's more than just about the school. It's about the community too. But at first, we're going to start with the school by giving the teachers a voice, the students a voice, the staff as a whole. EC Glass on their team, their #1 star is their custodian, Miss Greta. She's the biggest voice on the team, and she gets the most buy-in throughout the school. So as we talk to the principals and we're doing the trainings and bringing them in, it's who do you have on your team to get the best buy-in? Where's your student's voice? Where's your parents' voice? And how do we meet the needs of the students as a whole? So that's kind of our focus, and that's driving what we're doing in terms of changing behavior. Now we're starting to overlap with the academics and the social-emotional needs of the students.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Dr. Nillis?
So this was at Glass and Lincoln last year.
Yes.
I assume this is it's a continuing process, and
Yes.
so the question on the grant that we're, I guess, approving is how long that money that's for this year.
Yes.
And then next year
We'll reapply.
it just kind of, but I guess the intent is you maintain that with these schools.
Yes, sustainability,
And not just,
self-sustainability. Yes.
you know, the issue with grants is it's great, you get something started and the grant money runs out, and, you know,
Right.
if you're getting good results, you don't want to just drop it.
Right. And we've used a lot of the grant monies for training, and we're starting to use the train-the-trainer model. Even just sending out some staff to diffusing disruptive behaviors. We pulled from the base schools their best behavior personnel and mixed them with some division people to push out the training when they come back. So making sure that we can sustain it for the long term, but we're also looking at a mindset shift, a mindset change for Lynchburg City Schools and the way that we do things and the way that we work. Moving from punitive and punishment to back towards discipline. How do we teach, reteach? That means behavior, that means academics, and that means social emotional, even if we have to refer out for outside services for the social emotional piece.
Thank you. This is before us tonight to give the superintendent approval to sign and approve the Virginia Tiered System of Support Grant Cohort 4 Implementation Phase 2018. There's a second. Any further discussion?
This month, this has already been awarded, right?
Yes.
Yeah, but we're just giving.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
Just
Yeah,
wanna make sure.
we have the money.
Yes.
We have the money, yes.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. LCS Student Discipline Forums.
Wow, it's Miss Latanya Brown. All right, board, I have a quick PowerPoint for you. Tonight we are here to give an overview of the discipline forums. During the 2017-2018 school year, Lynchburg City Schools completed its annual discipline forums as outlined in Reporting Requirement 26 of the Office of Civil Rights Resolution. The forums are held each year at the 18 schools in which a select group of diverse students respond to predetermined questions around disciplinary practices that exist within their schools from their perspectives. These forums serve as a vehicle in which to hear the voice of our students in an effort to provide safer, more equitable, and more positive environments in all our LCS schools. Ultimately, we want to determine how they perceive their school environment and how they view discipline. We know that discipline does not equate to punishment, but we will ultimately want to know how students perceive discipline and how we can get better at teaching students the rules and expectations and supporting in the learning of the behaviors that we want to see them demonstrate while providing an effective and caring school-wide environment. Some major themes this year from the Discipline Forums. When you're talking about behavior expectations, nearly all the students at all grade levels knew their school rules. They knew the school-wide behavior expectations. And they also knew how to apply them in the classroom, in the hallway, and on the bus. They also this year knew the difference between a minor infraction versus a major infraction. And that was a big growth for us this year, with making sure that we were increasing our teaching of the language to the kids in terms of what are minor things that you get in trouble or receive redirection for in the classroom versus something major in which you might have to talk to an administrator for. In regards to student-teacher relationships, secondary students' comments indicated that teachers who engage their students in the learning have fewer discipline problems, while students at all levels felt that positive interactions and relationships with their teachers result in an improved student behaviors in the class. So they could tell you the difference between who they had good relationships with, who they didn't have good relationships with, and who was so-so in regards to teachers. Student voice. Students across all grade levels that had received at least one referral expressed a desire to be heard and be able to give their feedback concerning behavioral referrals that had been issued by teachers. They asked for an active voice to be able to have an open dialogue with their principals, to talk about whether it was fair, whether it was not fair, and also having a hand into what type of disciplinary infraction or what they receive in terms of discipline. So having a voice actively into what the outcome would be. I can say this year, alternatives in regards to alternatives to suspension, the principals have utilized more research papers. And so keeping the students in school and having them to write a research paper to teach the behavior, but also to make them aware of the behavior, and then process with them after the report is written to see what did they learn, what did they, what would they do differently next time. So looking into alternative to suspension, some of those conversations came up. It was like, I had to write a research paper. It was long. Okay, well, what did you learn from it? So starting to have those dialogues this school year was something new, and I was glad to see that principals were starting to put in alternatives to suspension. Research-based strategies. Some students described the use of think sheets and the use of classroom discussion groups, such as morning meetings and restorative circles. Morning meetings are held at the elementary level, and the kids will come in and they would tell you how the morning meeting went, if it went well, if they were holding it regularly or not. And a lot of the kids loved the morning meetings, and they said morning meetings was a time for them to de-escalate, calm down, recenter, refocus before they started their day. So they tended to like the morning meetings. At the high school and secondary level, we used restorative circles within the classrooms. A lot of the English teachers used restorative circles, especially on the high school level. And they would use them once a week at the end of the week with the students for them to process through the week in terms of what was going on, and also to recenter. And if anything was merging within the community, they used that as a time for them to refocus and focus on school. So. School climate. Students' comments indicated that school climate in elementary school is generally more inviting than the climate in most other secondary schools. And that was because the students at the elementary schools tended not to change as many classes as often, so they had the same teachers, so they had more time to build those relationships. On the secondary level, students switched class a lot, so they didn't have as much time to build those relationships with the teachers. And so then we started a side conversation from that lasted about 30 minutes. How do you build a relationship with the teacher? What does that look like? Then they turned me down to the left, talk about the old teacher versus the new teacher, because they were millennial students. And how do the teachers adjust to their genre of age? And what does that look like? So all of those were good conversations. And lastly, administrative visibility. Across all grades, the students said that administrators were highly visible. They would see them in the morning when they would get off the bus or walking to school. They would see them in the hallways. They would see them in the classrooms. They would see them in the cafeteria. And all of them felt comfortable with talking to the principals. And that was a no shocker, but they did. They felt comfortable with being honest with the principals. So we clearly see in this bulleted list that kids K through 12 want good relationships and interactions with their teachers. It's like that saying, students don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Ultimately, all of the themes that we see all tie back into the importance of relationships, communications, and not only being safe, but feeling safe in the school environment. From the Discipline Forums, we've worked to look at our trainings and how we're putting together the trainings. We not only use our Discipline Forums, we use the school climate surveys, we use the school improvement plans to look at some of the things that are outliners that we need to do. And so we chose to use our VTSS framework to build upon relationships, to build upon school-wide expectations and build better matrices, to talk about evidence-based classroom components like preventative language. What are you saying to the kid? How? What time are you saying to the kid? Saying those things to the kids. And also, in terms of other supports, looking at restorative practices. How are we rolling it out? What does it look like? What does trauma-sensitive practices look like? Are we just going to do awareness? Does it need to be in every school or all school? Culturally responsiveness training. What cultures do we have in the schools? Are we being sensitive to those cultures? Are we engaging all students within the schools based upon their cultures in the way that they learn? Are we aware as educators how to engage the different cultures of students that we have in our classroom? And also function-based thinking. We used all of these practices to drive what we're going to do for this school year and look for outcome data to improve our out-of-school suspensions, also to increase the academics, and also increase students being in class for seat time. So when we're looking at these Discipline Forums results, we give the feedback back to the principals, and a lot of this information is subjective, and we give them major themes, and we give them recommendations also to use. And we ask that they review their school climate information and also the school improvement plan to come up with goals to meet the needs of their students at their schools based upon this information too. Any questions?
Questions? Dr. Coleman?
Well said. Very comprehensive. I'm looking forward, Madam Chair, to a future work session where we will plow into revisiting what we've done with the student policies around discipline and seeing what's working and not working and what we need to do to further help advance what you are trying to do.
Thank you. Any additional questions or comments? And this was for information tonight? Yes. Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Excellent.
I got one more. My last one.
The next deals with Gear Up Virginia Award.
2015 school year, Lynchburg City Schools was awarded $105,000 from the State Council of Higher Education for Virginia, better known as SHEV, to implement Gaining Early Awareness and Readiness for Undergraduate Programs, which we call GEAR Up. LCS is proud to be entering year 5 of the GEAR Up grant at both high schools. Our core teams at each of the schools include 2 coordinators, 1 data keeper, a representative from the counseling department, representatives from the administrative team, and the GEAR Up division coordinators, who are Mrs. Daisha Womack and myself. At this time, I want to turn it over to Ms. Womack.
Good evening. I am aware that you know about GEAR Up, but you probably will not find anyone who is more enthusiastic and passionate about GEAR Up than I am. So I'm going to sprinkle a little bit of my love and hope that I can leave it with you for the remainder of the cohort for GEAR Up tonight. So thank you for allowing me to speak. The program overview for GEAR Up is listed here, but I'd like to take this opportunity to share a little bit about the goals and objectives for GEAR Up. They include the increase for the academic performance and college preparation of GEAR Up students, increase the number of students in rigorous courses, to increase the knowledge of college and financial aid among students and their families, and to improve college readiness rates and college enrollment rates. Lynchburg City Schools is one of 15 divisions in Virginia who provides the GEAR Up grant. In addition to that, Lynchburg is one of 4 divisions who provide what we call the McKenty-Vento grant, or the Homeless Youth Service Pilot Initiative. So in addition to the $105,000, $5,000 of that goes directly to our homeless population. And we work directly with Ms. Judy Brooks, who takes care of making sure that our homeless population students receive the same support of our GEAR Up cohort students. You will see listed there a number of GEAR Up highlights. I'm going to try to hit on some of my favorites, but they all are my favorite. The scholarship is one of the important features that our GEAR Up students will receive. And when I talk about our GEAR Up students, I am mentioning right now our 11th grade cohort. So that's all 11th grade students at both Heritage High School and EC Glass High School, who initially came in the 7th grade and signed what would be called our golden ticket, which is simply a release of information. And currently we have all of those except for maybe 17 students, and we're working to find those students. Upon graduation, they're eligible for up to $2,000 to use at a post-secondary school, whether it's vocational or 4-year school, 2-year school of their choice. In addition, we offer what's called tutor.com through GEAR Up, and this is a free service to our students, 24-hour, 7-day-a-week homework assistance, over 40 subjects. It can be accessed through their Chromebook or their cell phone. It includes AP classes, SAT prep, ACT prep, online quizzes, you name it, videos, flashcards. They can get any additional help that they need. Also at Heritage High School, we have push-in tutors that come in to assist them with help. Motivational speakers, we've had our very own Leland Melvin come in to speak at our schools. We've also had Cordell Farley come in, who wrote the book Life Lessons of a Throwaway Kid. We've had Cool Speak, several of their speakers come in. We also, which was I thought was very cool, we had Mrs. Joy from Mrs. Joy Absolute Bakery. We had our students from EC Glass go to her bakery, and she was an amazing speaker for them. And if you've never been there, you should go and enjoy some of her delicious treats. Our students also participate in many college visits. Our students from both Heritage High School and EC Glass, they have toured the University of Richmond. They have been to JMU, University of Virginia. They recently went to Bridgewater College. There are several additional college visits that they will plan for this upcoming year, so we're excited about that, all through GEAR Up. Additionally, summer camps are offered to our students, again, free of charge. This past summer, our students participated in a cybersecurity academy at the campus of Norfolk State University. And lastly on there, you'll see what's called our annual kickoff event for students and their parents. Both schools come together at Randolph College, and we all enjoy a meal that's catered by Randolph College, and it gives our students and parents an opportunity to find out all of the different events that will be occurring throughout the upcoming year. And so just, again, this is an opportunity for you to see that although both high schools offer the Gear Up grant, they also do different things that focuses on what specifically are the needs for their students. As you see, these are some of the upcoming events. We are very excited about a lot of the events that are going to take place for our students. These are resources, these are events, these are activities that are in place for the Gear Up students. Again, 11th grade students at both of our high schools, and this is preparing them for college and career readiness. I could probably sit here and talk all night, but I know that you don't want to hear that. But I really appreciate you taking the time to listen to me talk about Gear Up, and I certainly will be willing to answer any questions or concerns you may have.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Carter?
Gear Up sounds like a wonderful program. What does a student have to do to join?
Absolutely nothing.
They just, and they can sign up as early as what grade?
We received the grant through a cohort starting the 7th grade year. And so any student who enrolled in 7th grade was a participant. It will continue until 12th grade. At the 12th grade year, the grant will end unless the state reapplies and we receive it again. So it's a cohort. It goes from 7th to 12th.
So the 11th graders now are the ones that are a part of this?
Yes.
I don't have a question, but I just want to tell you thank you for your enthusiasm. I had the pleasure of working with Gear Up program or being familiar in my former life with Georgetown University working in outreach, and they do some amazing things. So I was so excited to see it in our school system here, and it's even better to see someone that's so enthusiastic about it because it really, there's some amazing opportunities. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Love it.
Dr. Brennan?
I'd like to reiterate Ms. Mason's comment as well. Thank you so much for all your enthusiasm. It's such a great program. I got a question, which is that we're all aware of the Beacon of Hope with their current scholarship and what they've enrolled, and we know that we have a MOU with them to partnership to work together to accomplish, I think, a lot of the goals that happen with Gear Up. And as I look at your list, I see scholarship, tutoring, SAT prep, college visits, FAFSA workshop, which I think Beacon of Hope is very intimately involved in. My understanding is back when this started, Beacon of Hope was sort of an active partner in the grant and helped with it. And I'm just wondering if they are still partners in this process, that they are included in discussions that you all have. Because I know it seems like they're all trying to do the same thing, which is do well for these children as well as other children in the schools.
That's absolutely the most amazing thing about this program is that Beacon of Hope is absolutely a part. There's an implementation plan that we prepare for each year. So this grant runs from August 31st through September, well, is that right? September 30th, yeah, just to make sure. And so we all sit down together and as that core team that we mentioned of the Gear Up team, and we decide what activities will best meet the needs for the students in each particular grade level that they're in. And so the team of Beacon of Hope came together along with our core Gear Up team to decide which agency, which department would better fit whichever event or activity we would like to provide for our students. So for example, for FAFSA night, Beacon of Hope is going to sponsor that event, and then we would make sure that we work with them in order to make sure that our students are attending that event. Beacon of Hope is also having a HBCU college tour. Our students are going to participate on that tour. So there are things that we are already working together to make sure that we are doing more of a collaborative effort for and not overstepping things. That $2,000 scholarship, our Gear Up students have until age 22 to use that scholarship. So what I have suggested to them is access the Beacon of Hope scholarship first, then save your $2,000, and then access that after you have used your Beacon of Hope. So if you are thinking about going to community college, Step on the stay close, go far first, and then take your $2,000 and apply that to your next step. So we are all working together to make sure that our students are being able to utilize all of their resources.
That's great. Thanks so much. So when you look at the core group of people you have involved, so are there ongoing meetings with the Beacon of Hope during the year just related to Gear Up, where they're actively involved in it?
We meet quarterly.
Great.
And then there's also meetings that I have with Laura and Rachel weekly, if there's a need. We also have the Future Centers who are directly in our high schools, who are meeting with our counselors. So the cool thing about me being the division coordinator for Gear Up is I'm also the secondary supervisor over counseling, so I get to be in 2 places at one time sometimes.
Great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? I have one question regarding the funding, Mr. Beckles, sorry. It says Gear Up requested dollars, and there's a figure, and then it says in-kind contribution. Where does the in-kind contribution come from?
The way in-kind contribution works, for example, let's take Latonia's salary, for example. Since we already pay here, we could take that in-kind piece and credit that towards this. So it's not additional money to be putting in some of our time, or you take Miss Wilma. So that'll be the, we can allocate a portion of her salary, that'll be the in-kind, because we're already paying it, and we allocate a portion for whatever time she spends.
It's coming from Lynchburg City Schools.
Right, so it won't be an additional fund.
Okay. Any further questions? If this is up for vote. School board needs to give approval to the superintendent to sign and approve the Gear Up Virginia grant and implementation phase for the 2018-19 school year. Is there a motion? It's been moved and second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. We had a lot of items on this list tonight. I think we need a dinner break or something. All right, next item, proposed health insurance rate increase for retirees and Cobra participants. Mr. Beckles.
Back in August, the schools, the LCS Benefits Department, the City Benefits Department, and our consultant, when I said benefits consultant, the city and us share a consultant that helps us in our insurance plan, met with Anthem, and we went over last year's claim and the proposal for next year. Plus some of our own internal analysis and work. One of the things that came out of that meeting was next year medical costs is expected to increase around anywhere between 6 to 10%. Based on our meeting with Anthem, they're recommending a 7.4%, what we call, and that's the baseline, what we call trend increase. I think as I mentioned before, medical costs increase every year. There used to be 2 certainties of in life, death and taxes. What I said now is 3, death, taxes, and the increase in healthcare costs, because it continues to go up every year. Now, we know we increased the healthcare costs about 10% last year for the employees. That's the first time in about 6 years that we've increased it. And I know the board's concerned we don't want to increase too much going forward, but I want to bring to the board's attention that at some point, beginning next year and going forward, we're going to have to increase healthcare costs a little bit just to keep pace. If you don't do that, eventually what's going to happen is, like what happened 2 years ago, the costs spike and then you have to cover it with an increase. And normally those increases are going to be more drastic because you've foregone those little increases, now you have to take a big increase. I just want to bring that out, that's going to have to be some concern next. And I know as we don't give increases in summer year, we don't want to increase the healthcare costs, but the cost still goes up. So at some point they're going to collide. But throughout the process, one of the things we did discover was that the retirees and the Cobras, because the retirees, people that retire from Lynchburg City Schools, as long as you've been working for us for 10 years, up to the age 65, you can remain on our health insurance. One of the things we did discover, though, they remain on insurance and they were paying the premium with the 11% contributed by the school board. Well, since they're no longer employees and it's a benefit to stay on our insurance, This recommendation is that we increase their rates to be the full rate. But when I say the full rate is, they won't get the contribution that the board does for all employees that are currently employed with LCS. And you can see the list. I did a schedule. The greatest amount of increase would be 11.9% on the single coverage. And then it goes to 7, 7, and 6. You can see the differences in the various rates there, but it is for the retirees and Cobra participants in the insurance plan. And again, I just want to remind everybody, we are self-insured. We don't have an insurance premium we pay, and they cover it. We cover our own total cost. So the proposal here is to increase the Cobra and the retirees rate to the full premium by the tiers as you see them listed on your sheet.
Questions? How is the claim history of retirees?
Claim history and retirees. For the 12 months 2017, it was a negative $335,615.99. When I say negative, that's when you take their premiums, plus their claims, plus the fees that we've paid, their premiums, well, there was a net loss on that group of $335,615.
How are we going to address that?
That's the $1 million question. Now, I would point out, the older we are, the more expensive it is for healthcare. So to a certain extent, this grouping is going to be a little bit more expensive. Now, your question is, how do we address that negative? There's only really two ways of doing it. Stop the benefit. You keep those that are currently on it, but don't let anybody else add to it. You really can't charge the premium enough to cover the deficit, so really you're only left with one viable option. Other than that, the mere nature of the grouping is going to be expensive to cover.
So the loss ratio is higher, we are self-insured. So is it hurting the premium of the current employees in terms of?
Yes. And you can see in my next presentation, that's not the only piece that's hurting contributions.
Dr. Brennan?
Ms. Bendel, to be fair though, because it's spread across the entire staff population, the younger people who are healthy or paying a premium, there's probably some funds in there. So it should level out with your healthy people paying their premium and the older people.
From an insurance perspective, you could look at it that way.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I'm paying more.
Yeah, but as far as how that product works, it's not like there's a $300,000 loss because of that older group. You've got this other
well,
income.
This segment, yes.
For that segment,
yes.
there is. But for the overall picture, you can't have that for your model. For your model for insurance for the entire
no, the whole
group.
model need to be positive.
Right.
When it goes negative is when we have to increase the rates.
Right. So it's not negative for the entire group, it's negative for that population.
For this segment,
because we have younger people who are healthy who are not tapping into it.
Or the healthier ones, I should say.
The healthier ones, sure. So I was also just comment, I always hate to see insurance premiums go up, but as you say, it's going to have to happen. And particularly in people who are retired who may have less funds. But I think looking at the numbers, it's about $700 per year increase for the two large groups, which are the retired signal and retired spouse. And I think it certainly makes sense to do that, for them to have the benefit of continuing to have health insurance.
One of the things we're going to grapple with into the future is this cost of healthcare. As a nation, we're going to grapple with it. As a district, we're going to grapple with it. It's just one of those facts of life that are not going to decrease as time goes on. So it's just be one of those we have to do the best we can. We do have a good plan, but eventually I think there's going to have to be a balance between the quality of the plan and the price we pay for it. So at some point, the plan is going to be less rich and it's going to cost you more.
Any additional questions? This is up for vote at our next meeting.
I would just point out the Cobra grouping. I mentioned the retirees. The Cobra group, net loss, and that was $21,399.39.
There's been a request to maybe move this to the consent agenda. Is that something you want to consider? If you have questions, if it's on the consent agenda, you can always ask that it be taken off. So, is there a motion to move it to the consent agenda? All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Next item, health insurance premiums and claims for non-LCS entities.
Also, during the review of our insurance, another thing that I won't say discovered, but we were able to isolate is the amount we isolate each of the entities that we are fiscal agents for. Now, these entities are not LCS employees, although we are the fiscal agent. That would be the STEM Academy, Stepsis Link, Central Virginia Governor School, and LAUREL. Though their employees participate in our self-funded insurance plan. Just want to bring to the board's attention some information on that group. For those groups, we pay the plan administrative fee of $35.05 per employee per month. Also the stop-loss insurance premium of $18.66. We also pay, these last two fees are related to the Affordable Care Act. It's the Patient Center Outcome Research Institute fee, which is $2 per covered life per year. So we cover 10 people, it's $2 times 10 for the year. Then we pay the Transitional Reinsurance Program assessment fee. That is $63 per individual covered per year. And then on B, I said the LCS also pays the net loss on claims for all non-LCS employees when insurance premiums they paid are less than the claims incurred. You should have a schedule that I listed for 2017 by the various entities, Stepsis Link, STEM Academy, Stepsis Link, Governor School, and LAUREL for 2017. And you can see the individuals that I just added total. For the total for 2017, there was a net loss to cover that group of $160,471. If you go to 2018, this is just for the 7 months, January through July. Again, I'll read the total. The net loss to cover that is $121,523. Now, the net loss is a result because of the premiums they pay, minus the claims, plus the fees we pay, that will result in the net loss. Now, if you look at the individuals, individual entities, I should say, let's look at 18. STEM Academy is $7,500 negative. Stepsis Links, this is $4,400. If you notice, the year before it was $23,790 negative. You have Governor School of 16 positive for 18. For 17, it almost broke even. LAUREL for 18 is $145,980. For 17, it was $132,782. So you can see those 2 years there took a hit. And then we added to the Blue Ridge and the detention center. So, as I pointed out earlier, you have the retirees that's in the negative, and you have the entities that are non-LCS employees that are participating in our plan that's resulting in negative. I just wanted to bring this information to the board's attention. Basically, you have 3 options. 1, leave it the way it is. 2, ask the entities to find their own insurance. Or 3, we come up with some mechanism for those entities to offset the losses that their particular employees incur. But I just needed to bring this, wanted to bring this information that when we begin to look at our plan as a whole and break it up into segments, we can see how the various segments either contribute or results in some of the costs and the claims that we're experiencing.
Dr. Gupta?
Just for the clarity, how much are we subsidizing from our general budget in terms of fees and for this non-LC entities?
If you look at just fees.
$145,000 total?
Did you say just fees or not with the claims?
Total.
If you look at the fees, give me a second, I can get you that number. For 18, you got 28,000 plus 50.
That's okay. It's about 145.
Yeah.
For 40,000 or so.
For this year, so far for the 7 months, 48,000, just on fees this year.
Did you say 48?
Yeah, if you look at the 18, plan and administrative fees are 28,000. 15,000 on the.
Oh, gotcha.
Just for the 7 months so far.
And the total for 17 is 160,000, and for right now is 121,000.
Right, now that is fees and
the losses.
Net loss on claims, correct.
So this is on the shoulders of LCS, but they are not LCS employees.
Exactly.
Correct.
Why did we let it happen so far?
Well, this isn't a good answer, but it's always been that way. One of the things that we did was when we moved to the new system that we currently have, one of the things we break out everything where we can isolate all of the costs. It's much easier to do it on the new system now. I would say in previous years, Governor's School was the largest one. Well, at that point, we were monitoring that one. But it's just has always been that way. One of the things, as we are fiscal agents, it's almost assumed that we bear all the costs to operate these, be the fiscal agent. Nobody really pays attention to what it costs us to be the fiscal agent. So as we try to look at every, turn every rock over, you begin now to see how all these little things begin to add up at the end of the day. And we finally got around to breaking out the insurance. So whether it's a health insurance, whether it's liability, we have them now paying their own general liability insurance. We have them now paying their own workers' comp insurance. So as we go through, you're making them, well, not making, but you know what I mean. Allocating the cost out to those entities. This is the last, well, I won't say the last, one of the other pieces, big piece that's there. And again, as things get tighter, you begin to look at,
absolutely,
look a little deeper. But to address this situation, I would want to say it's not going to be easy one, because none of these entities, dare say, will want to cover their own costs. But at the end of the day, these are not LCS costs.
I know, Madam Chair, this is an information item. Is there a way to make an information item as an action item? Because every month is important here.
Yes, there is a way.
Okay.
Let's finish taking questions and yes.
Yeah. With all due respect to everyone, I would hesitate from taking action tonight because I was of the opinion that there's a plan afoot to involve superintendents and other entities to have proper discussions and then move in a direction towards doing that.
I did reach out to all of the superintendents since these are regional programs and other counties have students in them, to just make them aware that the board was going to have a discussion and that the board was not going to take action tonight, but that there would be a discussion regarding this issue, and for many of them, it took a conversation to really get them to understand that although we are the fiscal agent, there was no expectation that we bear the fiscal responsibility to assume these costs. So as far as the superintendents are concerned, they have been made aware, they understand, and in most cases, I would say we're having conversations with our board about how to address this. They were like, well, I'm glad you let me know so I can have conversations with my board about how to possibly address this and can you keep us updated on it. With the exception of the Gov School, which I attended the Gov School meeting and was able to talk to the program director, the other program directors have not been, to my knowledge, made aware of this and are quite possibly learning about it right now as they watch this, if they are watching this or should they stream it. So I would share Dr. Coleman's hesitation that we at least have conversations with all parties involved as we come to a collaborative way to address it.
It does say on here to divide, we have 3 options, and if we can decide what of the options that we want, we could then move forward with what we don't want to leave it, or we don't want to fund it, or, I mean, I think we can.
Can't expect any of those places to take over next month with no notice. I mean, they're going to all have to put it into their budget and put it, it can't be,
No, it would
here
have
you
to be
go.
for the next year's
Right.
budget. Because to be fair to them, it's not
Right,
part of
there's
their
no way.
budget,
Right,
nor
you
was
can't
it
do
planned
it
for
right
this
now.
year.
Exactly.
So it will be a year from now
Oh, no,
if the
next-
changes were made
Right.
to affect their budget.
And I would hope that would be the case. LCS has done a good job of building a good neighborly relationship with these entities. Yet at the same time, fiscal responsibility mandates that we make hard decisions. I think doing it the way that we're proposing to do it will ensure that we have responsibilities since they're seated in our school division. And so let's do this right and relieve ourselves of these burdens, but in the proper way.
And I will say that all of the superintendents that I spoke to were very appreciative that I had made that phone call and that I had let them know that this is what the board was discussing and the plan. So I agree with the good relations that we have with them.
Do you have any further thoughts, Dr. Gupta?
I understand the relationship. What troubles me, it has been going on for years right now. So what will change in a month's time? That's okay, we can take the action next time. But the point is, it has been on our radar screen for a while. It just brought up to the surface now. And it needs action. We cannot bear that burden. And when we are struggling to give money for salary increases, here we are carrying over $145,000 of additional burden year after year.
Any further thoughts? Okay, so are we okay with leaving it for next month? Thank you. If you have any further questions or thoughts, let Mr. Beckles know, or Dr. I do appreciate your reaching out to the superintendents with that information. All right, the next 4 items are regional school budgets. We don't have anything to do with the development of these budgets, but we do have to authorize the school administration to act as fiscal agent. So their boards develop the budgets, and now we are just approving recommendations.
Chair, are you suggesting that we could vote on all 4 of these at the same time?
I am suggesting that we can
So
vote on all
moved.
4.
So moved.
It has been moved and second that we authorize the school administration to act as fiscal agent for the Laurel Regional School budget, the Central Virginia Government School for Science and Technology budget, the STEM Academy budget, Napoleon F. Mahoney Stepworth Links budget. We have a first and second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, we are now down to item 13. Oh, school board work sessions. Dr. Edwards?
Yes, so I guess several meetings ago we decided that we wanted to put work sessions in place and to officially take action on what those dates are. So what you have listed here are the dates to the best of our ability. I believe they are the first and third Tuesday, except in cases where it didn't work during the month. So we need approval for the work session dates so that we can put those in the calendar. And then of course, after that, we'll need some suggestions for work session topics on October 16th. So.
Questions or comments?
So work sessions will be there. Assuming if there is work to be discussed, then they will have a work session. But so we have a space on the calendar, but there's no work, we will not have a work session. Is my assumption right?
Yes.
Yeah, correct. I'm smiling because you said if there's no work.
Yes, that's what I mean.
Silly.
We will not create work for a
Mike
work
was laughing too. There's always hope.
create work for the work session.
The October one, whatever we don't get to on the retreat will
Yes.
certainly
Yes.
be an obvious candidate for
And
the
there were
16th.
21 topics submitted for consideration, so there are quite a few. I'm sure we'll. All right, so this is.
I guess to follow up on that, I know that's kind of a cute little comment I made, but I mean the 16th is only 4 days after the retreat, and I don't know how much prep administration's going to need, even though the work sessions are informal. We just need to keep that in mind, is all. So.
Well, I have one item that I know from
Already.
a previous work session that you asked me to collect information for, and I have information, and it's on the recess. So we have at least one work session item, so I can give you that information.
This is for approval for the dates for school board work sessions throughout the 2018-19 school year. We have a motion second. Dr. Brennan. Any further questions? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, so I heard that was an aye. All righty. Another short topic, capital improvement program update.
Well, Ms. Larson, I appreciate you expediting those previous agenda items so that I can have the balance of the evening to discuss the capital improvement plan.
Dr. Copeland, that was 30 minutes ago, just so you know that.
As part of our budget, we submit our capital improvement requests to the city every year. For those of you that might not be aware, we are not the owners of our buildings. We simply operate and maintain them. The city of Lynchburg owns our building and the properties that they reside on. So we submit our plans to them. Based off of some recent information, I wanted to come back to you, and I've provided everybody a color copy of the sheet so that it was a little bit easier to read and understand. So I'm going to go through and explain the different colors, the way they're laid out, so that you know where we are right now. So I'll start with the column that's budget year FY 2019 that is blue. All of those projects that you see in that column were funded by the city, and we began working on many of them July 1st of 2018. So for this year's work effort and the things we had identified, we are doing great. And actually, we just received the architectural design proposals for Sandusky Elementary School this week. So we have those in for review. So we're working on everything that's in the blue. Where there are a few challenges are when you look at the top portion, the top the small table at the top that is titled Renovation and Replacement Projects. What the city has informed us that all of those projects that you see identified for 2020 to 2023 need to initially slide 1 year to the right. So although we have the design money for Sandusky Elementary School, we don't anticipate getting the construction money until a year later than we were hoping. And everything else kind of moves out. So the big significant impact to that is that a delayed construction on Sandusky Elementary School, which is a mid-1960s built school, a delayed renovation to Lincoln Elementary School, which was a 1960s built school, and a delayed renovation to Paul Monroe Elementary School, which was another 1960s based school. And for all the buildings that we currently operate, those 3 buildings are the only 3 buildings that have not had a significant renovation since they were built. They might have had additions that were done to them. Examples would be Sandusky Elementary School or Paul Monroe. They might have had fires that required construction of a new portion of the building, example being Lincoln Elementary School. But they have not had that renovation cycle that you like buildings to go through. So that's the first wow portion of this short little presentation. The second one is that if you look in our 2020 capital improvement plan, we have been asked to prioritize what we would like to do for next year. And the way that I approach that prioritization is fairly simple. Roofs over everything else. Because if you've got roof issues, you have the potential for multiple other issues. Given the fact that we had roughly $1.2 million for maintenance type projects, and that's what the majority of this page is about maintenance projects. So when you see the mechanical, electrical, athletic stuff, gym floors, roof replacements, paving, fencing, playgrounds, those are kind of our recurring maintenance, significant maintenance needs. Based on receiving roughly $1.2 million for next year, and that the initial estimates out of the city are flat funding, no additional money for CIP, which means roughly $1.2 million, and we got $1.1 million worth of roofs. If we don't get any additional funding, all we will be able to afford to do will be the roofs. The HVAC projects that are priority 2, some of them are going to reach what I call critical mass, because we have already done a life cycle extension of some of that equipment. So you can only really do that once when you're talking about specific chillers and boilers and things like that. At that point, you've kind of stretched what is normally a 15 to 20 year item from 20 to 25, and after that you really don't have another life cycle extension opportunity because the equipment's pretty much worn out. So I wanted to bring all of this to your attention. If the city decides to continue to slide our Sandusky Elementary replacement and our renovations for Paul Monroe and Lincoln, that's kind of where the nice bright yellow colors pop into the middle of this. We're going to have to start making some decisions on select equipment replacements so that we don't have catastrophic failures of things during a school year, which put a real bind on us. We've gotten lucky with a few things that have occurred over the past 5 years, and that we lost a boiler at Dunbar, and we happened to lose it in the spring. So we have the summer to take care of that. Or we start having chiller problems at Paul Monroe, and it happens to be right at the end of the school year. We can expedite a replacement and get that done over the summer, so we're ready to go for the beginning of the school year. I hope I continue to have good luck in all that we do, but at some point, at some time, something is not going to last as long as we want it to, and we're going to be in a bind. So we do carry a maintenance reserve. Our maintenance reserve is roughly $200,000. Mr. Beckles and I are discussing with our fund balance request possibly increasing that a little bit, but $200,000, if you look at the price of some of these, you're talking about a portion of a chiller, not the entire project. And we have had to dip into operating to do some of these repairs in the past. So I just wanted to bring all that to your attention and answer any questions you may have.
Dr. Coleman?
Dr. Copeland or Dr. Edwards, Madam Chair, will this be a matter that through your building and people campaign that we would discuss at the City Council Board retreat?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, Dr. Simon.
Where does the issue with the mold and the remediation, how does something like that fit into this with the auditorium?
Yes, ma'am, the auditorium at Dunbar. So working very closely with Mr. Beckles. Maintenance is continuing with that effort, funding it right now, and then we will look to shift fund balance money into the operating budget of maintenance to recover whatever expenses they have. So that's how we're paying for that effort right now.
Dr. Brennan?
Dr. Coleman's question, has there been discussion or thought about maybe having our joint meeting at one of these buildings so that City Council could actually see what they're like?
Wow.
There's an idea.
Yes, we've discussed having meetings in schools. There's some challenges with having meetings in schools for some of the council members have expressed some concerns. I will say that next Tuesday I am going to council meeting to present on sort of the, I was there maybe 6 months ago, and now how is it now? To give them obviously an update on our performance and schools being accredited and things that they express concerns about, but also to share our desire to not only reinvest in LCS in terms of what we want to do and what we have been talking about with our staff. And that was one of the things that the staff said, you know, we have to start having these conversations, but also our capital improvement. And as Ben said, we don't own the buildings, we maintain them, but at some point, even our best Band-Aid is going to give way. And we just, you know, we're really mindful about the learning environment, because that also plays a major role in what we saw here today with test scores and how students perform. Also, as we go forward with our 5-year strategic plan and we're looking at the Sandusky project and possibly having a larger elementary school, that opens up the possibility for a lot of creative thinking around another one of the possibilities that was mentioned in terms of how we zone our division and how we put children, I guess, assign children to schools. It also opens up the conversation about, and some of the things that you wanted to talk about on the list, in terms of alternative programs. You saw LaTanya's presentation about trauma-informed, and we know a lot about smaller learning environments and smaller class sizes for students as they start to really, as we start to really work with them to address some of these extensive behaviors and some of the trauma that some of our kids are experiencing. So as I look at Sandusky, while I see this beautiful state-of-the-art new elementary building that can house more students, I also see possibilities for how we can address some of the other issues that we have. So sliding that a year out slides all my possibilities a year out as well, if not, you know, delaying them to a point where we have to rethink it. So I am very concerned and have expressed concern about this, particularly since this is not the first year of a slide. These are things that we've put, you know, on the table and we've moved. And I will say our kids are a very precious commodity, and they deserve excellent learning spaces. So next Tuesday I will be presenting to council on various things. This included, I am very thankful that we were able to reinstate city school leadership meetings with the mayor, vice mayor, the chair, and vice chair, and they said, what do you want on the agenda? And I said, capital improvement and compensation, please. And those were the 2 agenda items that I wanted, and we've spent some time talking about that. We do have our city school retreat coming up on October 30th. And again, I was asked, what would you like on the agenda? Capital improvement and compensation, please. So those are things that I think we need to be very present in those conversations. And as school board members, in addition to me setting up quarterly one-on-one meetings with you all, which is something that I will do, I also encourage us as a body to reach out to our counterparts and start having some meetings with them to talk about those 2 wonderful items that we feel very strongly about.
Dr. Coleman.
Going back to what Dr. Brennan stated, and Dr. Edwards, in my personal opinion, has done an excellent job in those meetings articulating those concerns along with Chair Morrison. If it does end up being in a school, and I understand that's a huge, in light of the other dynamics, I wouldn't dare touch all of that. I know the mayor would certainly be in favor of us being in a school. However, if we do end up in a school, I thought that to be a brilliant idea, that rather than going to Glass, to go to Sandusky, if we had it in a school. I'm just throwing my little 2 cents out.
We did it in Sandusky 4 years ago.
Well,
and
good.
We did it in Paul Monroe the year before that. So I'm all for a school also.
Well, good. Well, I wasn't in those meetings, I don't think, to clear my throat.
Dr. Gupta.
As we had before the retreat, would it be possible to get 5-year historical data on enrollment in all these elementary schools?
Certainly we could probably get that information.
Good question. Dr. Millis?
So, you know, I'm looking at this and some of like the HVAC and chiller replacements, if they die tomorrow, and you're looking at probably a 3 to what, 5-month kind of replacement cycle for some of these things, or is there a way to expedite?
That would be a quick turnaround because the majority of this equipment is they don't build it till you give them the purchase order, and you will have to put a temporary in place to cover the entire system.
Which costs money.
Yes, sir.
I'm just wondering about the disruption in the school building when something like this happens, you know.
It's significant.
Yeah.
I mean, you end up with a chiller laying on the ground outside of the building that won't be in a location where it is normally hidden or behind noise barriers, because you put it as close to the building as you can get it, because you pay by the foot for the piping and the connections and everything else. So it is a little bit of an inconvenience for the building, and the lead time on most of this equipment is easily 6 to 8 weeks from the time you write the check.
Yeah, and I guess a follow-up on the electrical work that's envisioned here. Is this a wholesale replacement of all the existing electrical in some of these buildings, like say for Sandusky?
Well, if we know we're not going to get a new building, we
Right.
know we have to do an electrical overhaul to the building. So we recently did one of those at Heritage Elementary School about 2 years ago. So you basically take the building offline for the entire summer.
Okay.
And start from the electrical service provider's transformer. They'll upgrade the transformer for you, and then you go from there, updating all of your panels and rewiring your building.
Okay, thank you. This was for information.
Yes, ma'am.
That was really, I could really follow this. Thank you very, very much. It was very, very helpful, at least to me. Thank you.
All right, we are now to superintendent's comments.
Sure.
You have 30 seconds.
30 seconds. Thank you. Well, the 1 and 2 agenda items are the superintendent's parent advisory council and personnel advisory council, which those members don't have to be board approved. They are parents and personnel who meet with me, and again, we posted the meeting dates. Their names are submitted to their building principals, and they submit them to me, or staff submit directly to Mrs. G, and I work for the personnel advisory council. But I did want to make you aware that those 2 councils also are up and running with their 4 dates posted. In the spirit of equity, I'd like to say happy Hispanic Heritage Month from September 15th to October 15th, and I know that many of our schools had some wonderful celebrations. I do want to thank Ethel Reeves for working to put together our equity inclusiveness calendar, which will be one of the things that we take to the equity committee. But we do need to be mindful that we have children that we need to recognize, celebrate, and value, and let them know that they are important to us and that we love them too. So we're trying to make sure that we honor those commitments, and we're always getting better at those things. There was a wonderful, like 80-page list of things I've been doing that Denise has prepared for me that I'm willing to read to you. No, I'm just kidding. She did prepare a very long list for me, which I am not going to read to you, except to say that many of the things that are in your board goals are already under development. And I will say Dr. Copeland and Mrs. Morrison and I are going to a strategic planning workshop on October 16th and 17th, I believe, or 15th and 16th. 15th and 16th. So we are really going to learn more about engaging the community in the process. We have a template of areas of focus, which the board has helped, my staff has helped. We have a lot of data already, and that template has 4 areas. One is student growth, development, and success, which is pretty much all things students. Complementary to that is our personnel growth, development, and success. And here's where our compensation package, our professional development comes in, and even staff health and wellness comes in under there. Fiscal responsibility and management, you've seen some of the work that we've been doing in terms of looking at where our dollars going. So we are definitely moving in that direction. And then community engagement and involvement, which is the one that I want to shift to right now. In addition to being the authors of telling our own story, which we've done, you saw some wonderful videos here talking about the VTSS process. I had mentioned that I want to get out in the community and have some conversations in the community, which I call conversations in the community. And I've been able to do that working with Cindy Babb to put them on our website so people know that, well, she'll be here, she'll be there. So I was at White Rock Church on Sunday, and we had a conversation, along with Charlita, we had a conversation about poverty, violence, crime, and education, and with a lot of engaged folks. And I'm sure after that I had several emails for outreach to other places, which I will go. This coming Sunday, I am going to be at the Brennan Household, sponsored by Embrace Our Schools, which will sponsor a conversation again in the community. So I say that to say they're mostly on the weekends, because during the evenings I'm trying to either be here or be present at student events, that we're going out into the community, very informal, no PowerPoint, no agenda, and just have where we can have a back and forth dialogue. Sometimes not so easy. Some of the questions are tough and pointed, but you know, I'm open and ready for them. I want to publicly post those where I'm going and where I will be. Some of them, and who's sponsoring them. These are not LCS sponsored. These are community groups who said, hey, will you come and engage our folks, whoever the folks are. So many of them are open to the public. Some of them are just that community group if they were having an event. But I still think it's important for the community to see and know where I'll be going for those things. So that will fall under our community engagement and involvement part of our strategic plan, but that's already underway, so some of the stuff we're doing. And the other thing I wanted to mention is on November 13th, which is, I believe, a Tuesday, during American Education Week, I met with the principals so that we can have a division-wide open house at each of our schools from 9 to 10:30 in the morning. Children will be in the school, so we're trying to minimize disruption to our educational program. So I wanted to put that date out there so that you would know that we, November 13th, Tuesday, November 13th, that we are making the efforts to have a community open house. More information will come, but it's a save the date. And again, falling under our community engagement and involvement to get people into our schools to see some of the wonderful things that we're doing in our schools. I did start the first set of what I call Give Me 30, which is 30 minutes of small cohort meetings with 3 to 5 building principals at a time, mixed groups. I will say Give Me 30 turned into Give Me 60, give me 2 hours, and it wasn't all me, the building principals. We have wonderful conversations about their goals, their vision, and what they want to see in their schools, and just great teamwork and collaboration so to help improve consistency across programs. Had a great meeting with one of the elementary groups and the 3 middle school principals yesterday. That was just phenomenal. I can't tell you how proud I am of them. I also had a visit today from my mentor as a new superintendent in Virginia. I get a mentor from VASS. So my VASS mentor, who is a former superintendent and a Virginia Tech professor, was here. And I said, no talking, we're going to schools. So we went to Heritage High School this morning and Sandusky Middle School and Sandusky Elementary School. And he was so impressed with students and staff and just the cleanliness of the building and the level of instruction and engagement. He just walked away and said, I went through 3 buildings, 3 principals, 3 sets of students, and you really have something amazing here. So I say that to share that because that was an outside person coming in. We had no agenda. There were no special programs. We just walked through halls. We did have him stop and do some cafeteria duty at 7th grade lunch at Sandusky Middle School and an elementary lunch at Sandusky Elementary School. This is just what the day looks like. So as a board, you should be really proud of the work that we're doing with our staff, our students. The leadership is amazing, and they're doing some wonderful things, so I wanted to share that. And my last little piece, did I work hard for this? I'm gonna put this on. This is my 10-miler, first time Virginia 10-miler, and I wear it as an accomplishment, one, of having done 10 miles in Hill City,
after used to running on flatlands. But more importantly, I do want to share this with you. And these actually aren't my words. These are the words of another administrator who also ran the 10-miler. But as I was running and thinking about this, and then I read what he wrote and shared with his staff, I go, oh, that's it. I have to share this. So I'm going to just briefly read this and then I'll be done. I had trained, sounds like me, but not with great intensity. I knew if I pushed myself, I could finish. But then I got into the race and began to doubt myself at times. It may have been a hill, that was me, or the fact that I still had 5 miles to go and I started to feel my body ache because I knew I hadn't run 10 miles since the last 10-miler. However, I couldn't give up. When you get to the last 1.5 miles, y'all know that's Farm Basket Hill. I now have a personal relationship with Farm Basket Hill. You reach that daunting hill in the sunlight. That feeling of looking at that hill, exhausted and aching, that I'm sure our kids get on a daily basis. We push them hard and keep a high bar for them, and they want to give up and throw in the towel. When they get to that hill, they all act differently. Some push, some slow down, some rise, some fall, some act out, some shut down, some get angry. And this is to his staff. It's not you or I, so don't take it personally, whatever reaction you may get. Going back to my race, I looked for the next person with a funny sign. And thank you, community, because there were lots of funny signs and lots of encouraging people. Someone who was yelling encouraging words from the side, or I had hoped that my Pandora radio had played some songs that I could get into and overcome these obstacles and doubts. So let's be that for our children. Let's keep that bar really high. But when they get to those moments, regardless of their reaction, encourage them through it. Be that embrace, that sign, that kind word, that upbeat song. Be whatever they need to get them to the finish line. And I thought, wow, that is so encouraging. You don't have to win the race, but if you're in the race, we are behind you. And I think you saw that with accreditation and our children making tremendous growth. And we need to celebrate that, reward that, and encourage them. So, thank you.
Okay. Board comments. Brief board comments.
Brief. Two quick things. One is, as we all know, the Poverty Progress Program has an initiative which is pre-K. On September the 20th, Willis Vanderwater and his staff did Willis did a phenomenal job of teaching pre-K ambassadors at Amazement Square. I think they had about 50 people to sort of go out in the community and tell how important pre-K is. And if everybody wants to know why it's important or what is pre-K, I'm sure that Willis and his ambassadors would be happy to help. The other thing is that about a year ago, we recognized Becky DeFore for her effort on behalf of Lynchburg City Schools to help us with our staff, which she did tremendously at no cost. I'm sure that what we saw in our SO results is partly due to that. There was a wonderful celebration of her life this weekend with her family at University of Lynchburg, which was a great experience. I just wanted to, on behalf of the board and of myself, just thank her for what she did and thank her family for what she did for our schools. Thank you.
Dr. Coleman?
Very briefly, just glad to get to the Glass Heritage game. That was great. I do want to give a shout out to LaTanya Brown. She did an excellent job relating to a group of young people in our community a few weeks ago, and she was incredible. I want to thank Dr. Gupta for giving me the opportunity to meet Dr. Hubbard, the Dean of the College of Business, who is willing to do some financial planning workshops for LCS families as we begin to work that through continued efforts with Ethel. And then I do want to just proudly state that I got a message today that of all the regions in VSBA, the only region that has total representation of the school divisions in that region as of today is the southern region, in which we are a part of, for the convention in November.
Any other comments? Dr. Gupta?
Mr. Beckles, he works very quietly and diligently to find fuel for this train to keep going. Thank you.
And I'm looking forward to the convention in Williamsburg, and I am working this week with Laura Hamilton to develop our successful story that we are going to showcase in Williamsburg. And she has an intern who has agreed to help pull it together once we nail it down. I was really glad to have that. With no other comments, we're done. Adjourned. I cut it off.